Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our vision on local government reorganisation is clear. We intend to create stronger single-tier local councils, better equipped to drive economic growth and improve local public services. The government's intention remains for all elections scheduled for May 2026 to go ahead, including East Sussex County Council.
Clearer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cuts to adult social care, collapsing support for children with special educational needs and disabilities, roads full of potholes, the list goes on. The Conservatives have failed East Sussex for too long and should be held to account. Another delay would mean that the current administration will have their term extended to 6 years. So can the Secretary of State give me and residents across East Sussex a clear answer on when we will know if we will have the chance to vote this May?
Secretary of State.
Well, I mean, first of all, I recognise the circumstances that he's describing that were left behind by the previous government's approach to local government funding. But as I said earlier on, it remains the government's intention that those elections will go ahead as scheduled, unless there is a very strong justification otherwise. That is what will happen.
Paul Holmes, Shadow Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State really needs to do better than that, because with local government reform now not being in the Labour Party manifesto, and the Prime Minister last week refusing to rule out further cancellations of local elections, will the Secretary of State now rule out cancelling the next local elections, yes or no? Not intention, will he rule it out?
Well, I'm sure he'll be aware that there are consultations and engagement going on with local authorities, but my intention, the government's intention, is that all the elections scheduled for next May will go ahead next May.
Paul Holmes.
There we go again, Mr. Speaker. It's the Secretary of State's intention. I remind him he actually leads his department and can set the legislation going forward. The Minister needs to accept that the uncertainty created by this government in LGR on sizes and funding has meant leaders have scrambled to meet the ever-changing expectations with no leadership from this government. So will the Secretary of State put his money where his mouth is and support this side's amendment to the devolution bill tomorrow that would ensure that local elections go ahead and local leaders have the certainty that they need?
And perhaps to the party opposite, the word consultation means a diktat issued from the centre. To me, it means listening carefully to the views of those who will be affected, but my intention remains, and my preference, is that the elections will go ahead on schedule.
We come to the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Zoe Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been very interesting to hear the back and forward on this particular question. It isn't, of course, just East Sussex or the councils due for reorganisation, but we know that there are also councils across the country due to have elections next year who have received letters asking them whether they will consider cancelling their elections. Could the Minister set out to the House what the content of those letters has been, and also whether he will back the Liberal Democrat amendments that also seek to get absolute assurance for councils across this country who are putting money into organising the elections to whether the government will stand with us and vote for our amendments? Thank you.
Well, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that this party doesn't understand consultation, but it does surprise me more if it was difficult for the Liberal Democrats. We are engaging with those councils that will be affected. There is precedent that where an election intended to go ahead would result in only a very, very short term in office for those individuals, but our intention, and indeed my preference, is that the elections will go ahead. We want to get to a point where we are cutting the cost of politics, simplifying decision-making for local people, and being able to deliver stronger economic growth and better local public services in every single part of the country.
Greg Smith.
Question 4, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is changing the way we fund local authorities, reconnecting funding with deprivation after 14 years of Tory governments cutting councils in the poorest places. The vast majority of upper-tier councils will see their income increase in real terms over the next 3 years. And for 2025-26, the local government finance settlement made available up to £577 million for Buckinghamshire Council, a 5.7 cash terms increase in core spending power on the year before.
Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That was a curious answer, because modelling from the county councils network indicate that assuming a punishing 5% annual council tax increase, core spending for Buckinghamshire Council would only go up by a below-inflation 2.2%, a real terms cut. So what assurance can the Minister give to Buckinghamshire Council that they will not find themselves with a real terms cut in spending power as they deliver essential services to my constituents?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we made, as I said in my earlier question, we made a policy statement on the Fair Funding Review consultation last week. And in addition, as I've already said, the vast majority of upper tier councils will see their income increase in real terms over the next 3 years. More details will come as we finalise funding arrangements, and the department will work closely with Buckinghamshire and all councils to make sure that their finances are stabilised after 14 rocky years.
Callum Anderson, who is a Buckinghamshire MP.
Mr. Speaker, multi-year funding settlements can help councils like Buckinghamshire Council prepare for the future and ensure the continuity of local services, but that wasn't necessarily an approach that was applied by the previous Conservative government. In the towns and villages that I represent in North Buckinghamshire, there is a particular pressure on economic and social infrastructure that meet rural requirements. So can the Minister set out a bit more detail about how the Fair Funding Review is taking all of that into account so that residents in my community get that access to services that they need?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do thank the honourable member for his question. I know how important it is for him to champion those towns and villages that he mentions, and he's right to say that the 3-year funding settlement for councils will help. That will help with forward planning, and where we're considering cost pressures, for example in adult social care, it will help us change the way that the service is delivered so that we can help people be supported and to make sure that councils like Buckinghamshire and all around the country have more stable finances in the future.
Maureen Burke.
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Glasgow City will receive £1.5 million Pride in Place impact funding to improve high streets and invest in community spaces and assets. In addition, neighbourhoods across Scotland will receive up to £20 million through our Pride in Place funding to transform their areas. We're working with the Scotland Office to announce the specific neighbourhoods in Phase 2. This is an exciting chance to put power, money and agency in the hands of communities that have been held back for too long, in order to drive the change that they want to see.
Maureen Burke.
I thank the Minister for that response. I can see from my survey of constituents in Glasgow North East that there is a real sense of excitement at the possibility of Pride in Place funding coming their way. From parks to shop fronts to local connectivity, I've been inundated with a range of incredible ideas to transform our corner of Glasgow. Will the Minister commit to giving my constituency bid your full consideration, and would you visit Glasgow North East to see the difference that this investment could make?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd be delighted to visit Glasgow North East, and I'm pleased to hear the local enthusiasm for our Pride in Place agenda and the work that my honourable friend is doing to support this locally and to champion her constituency. Phase 2 Pride in Place programme, we are working very closely with the Scotland Office in order to confirm the specific neighbourhoods, and we will be announcing this shortly.
Number 6, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While Tempsford, along with Cruise Hill in Enfield and Leeds South Bank, looks like a promising site, no final decisions on new town locations will be made until the strategic environmental assessment that was commenced on the 28th of September has concluded. Alongside the SEA process, my department will continue to engage with local leaders to further develop our understanding of how different locations might meet the government's expectations of what a future new towns programme can deliver.
Ian Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. St Neots is the nearest town to the proposed East Coast Main Line and East West Rail.
Sorry, carry on. Sorry.
East Coast Main Line, East West Rail interchange station that would be central to any new town development at Tempsford. Many recognise the opportunities of our area, but my constituents also need clarity, particularly on health and education infrastructure. With multiple local authorities potentially involved in that area across county boundaries, will the Minister meet with me to discuss how, in the event of a new town at Tempsford, how St Neots will be supported, and in turn how St Neots can support the new town?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. I stress again that no decisions have been made and will be made until the SEA process concludes. We have been clear that the next generation of new towns must be well connected, well designed, sustainable, healthy and attractive places where people want to live, and importantly that they must have the infrastructure, amenities and services necessary to sustain thriving communities established from the outset. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with him at the point when the SEA concludes and we know the final set of sites that we're taking forward.
Just to help people, it's Cambridgeshire question, so I'm taking Cambridge MPs, not anybody else. It's limited to them, so it might help people going forward. And he is a good Cambridge MP, Daniel Zeidner.
The plans for Tempsford vindicate those of us who have long argued for East West Rail and for the plans for the area between Cambridge and Oxford. But can my honourable friend assure me in the House that this government will be consistent in its support and won't wobble like the previous government, which led to a lost decade for these projects?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that question. We will be consistent where we make commitments around large-scale housing development or infrastructure that's required to support it. We intend to bring it forward, and he will know when it comes to Greater Cambridge. We're out to consultation on a century-led development corporation to take forward nationally significant growth in his part of the country.
Rachel Hopkins.
7, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're providing £1.5 million from the Pride and Place Impact Fund to enable immediate work in Luton to develop community spaces and revitalise local high streets. Work is already underway on this, and I look forward to seeing the impact that it will have locally.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really welcome the £1.5 million Pride in Place Impact Funded awarded to Luton, and I've launched a survey with my honourable friend, the member for Luton North, to find out what people want to see improved in our town. So does the Minister agree with me that local people's voices must be at the heart of shaping changes they want to see, and that it's this Labour government that's putting power and investment back in their hands?
Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, 100%. Can I just say thank you to my honourable friend for the work that she's doing to bring the voices of her community at the very heart of this. Our Pride in Place strategy represents a new way for government to work that puts power, agency, voice of our communities front and centre. We expect all local authorities in receipt of Pride in Place Impact Fund to work with their MPs, to work with their community, to deliver the change that local people want and to focus on local people's priorities.
Number 8, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are providing £1.5 million from the Pride and Place Impact Fund to enable immediate work in Slough to develop community spaces and revitalise local high streets. Local authorities, again, must engage with their local MP and their residents, and we have made this clear and we will continue to reiterate this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Having spoken to hundreds of my Slough constituents, tired of a high street where they don't feel safe, which lacks essential local amenities and is void of community spaces, I'm delighted this Labour government has given our town, neglected for too long, that £1.5 million boost to ensure that we have that boosting of Pride in Place. But does the Minister agree with me that it's essential that the local council now uses that money wisely, listens not only to my good self, but also to the priorities of local residents, and will ensure that, that the money is spent wisely?
My honourable friend, Mr. Speaker, is completely right to remind us of the neglect that we saw of our high streets under the last government, and to iterate the fact that it is this government that is putting in power and investment in the hands of our communities to drive this. And my honourable friend is also completely right that local authorities must listen to their communities and ensure that investment is focused on the priorities of those communities.
Will Stone.
Question number 9, please, Mr. Speaker.
Mr.
Speaker, we've taken decisive steps to support councils to invest in social housing, including committing to a new 10-year rent settlement and the launch of our £39 billion social and affordable homes programme. We are very clear on this. We want to see councils increase the levels of social housing.
I thank the Secretary of State for his response. Can he outline a bit more on what additional support the government can offer local councils like Swindon to invest in existing council stock, especially areas like Penhill where we have flats which are desperately needing it? Thank you.
Yes, the government is supporting councils to invest in new and existing social housing through the new 10-year rent settlement that I referred to and our £39 billion social and affordable homes programme. This year, a further £14 million is being provided to boost council house building skills and capacity. In addition, the Warm Homes Social Housing Fund will provide 1.2 billion from 25 to 28, and additionally over 1 billion is committed between 26 to 2030 to support cladding remediation for social landlords, ensuring equal access to building safety funds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're facing a national affordability crisis, but handing out planning permissions like confetti did not bring down prices under the last government, and there's zero reason to expect it will do any better this time. Does the Minister accept that relying on private developers to bring down prices can never work because they simply stop building whenever prices start to fall?
Well, I would respectfully wish to correct him. The reason that we're allocating £39 billion to build more social and affordable housing, the biggest amount in a generation, is precisely to avoid the very scenario he refers to.
George.
Question 10, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is making a record £10.5 billion investment, delivering the largest flood and coastal investment programme in history. The Floods Resilience Task Force brings together experts and decision makers from across the UK government, non-government and industry organisations at local and national level. The work of the task force will be considered as part of our ongoing planning reform programme.
What's Freeman?
In areas like Mid-Norfolk, planning is the key to avoiding developments which cause and exacerbate flooding. In Attleborough, a recent planning application for 350 houses in a floodplain was turned down by the council on the basis that it would cause flooding, but fast-tracked by the inspectorate on the basis of the government's house-building targets. Yet the government's planning and infrastructure bill contained nothing on flooding. That's why I'm introducing a bill. Would the Minister agree to meet with me and cross-party campaigners in constituencies affected? I have constituents now wading through sewage after that development to talk about how we can integrate planning with flood prevention.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government will maintain the highest levels of flood protection while taking decisive action to fix our broken planning system and deliver £1.5 million homes, 1.5 million homes through our plan for change. We'll consider whether further changes are necessary to manage flood risk when we consult on planning reform, including national policy relating to decision making later this year.
Liam Coleman.
Question number 11, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with permission, I'll answer questions 11 and 14 together. Our Labour government will build the homes Britain needs and put our country on a path to end homelessness for good. Unlike the Tories, which, if people haven't heard us say this already today, Mr. Speaker, allowed homelessness and rough sleeping to double. We will publish the child poverty strategy and the homelessness strategy shortly, and both will set out steps to defend families against the risk of getting stuck in temporary accommodation.
Liam Coleman.
During the last 14 years, the number of people in temporary accommodation in my constituency soared. In Beckenham and Penge, there are hundreds of families stuck in unsuitable accommodation for months and years on end, and 1 in 50 Londoners are now living in temporary accommodation. From speaking to fantastic local charities like Living Well, as well as local schools and NHS staff, I know that the housing crisis left by the last Conservative government is also a leading driver of deprivation and inequality. Can the Minister set out what her department is doing to address this?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my honourable friend for his very important point. London is a fine city, but we need to make sure that everyone there is housed well. And that's why the Labour government is investing more than £1 billion in homelessness services this year, an increase of more than £300 million. That includes £10.9 million top-up funding announced last month to increase access to support services in those areas like the one that he mentions, with the highest number of children in temporary accommodation. We have to get everybody in this country properly housed.
Rebecca Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as my honourable friend from the front bench says, we do need that housing. But there are some solutions locally where we have education or health land that has become available. Will she undertake to talk to those departments, and I can talk to her in more detail about local issues, about making sure that that land can be released as soon as possible with a prospect for it becoming social housing for local families?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank my friend who's expert in these matters for the question that she asks. She knows that the Secretary of State has taken recent steps to make sure that we do build homes and social and affordable homes in London, and we will certainly work very close with her on the information that she mentions to get homes built.
Sarah Dyke.
Mr Speaker, there are nearly 300 households in temporary accommodation in Somerset, 120 of which have children. Somerset is spending nearly £3.4 million per year on additional temporary accommodation to help meet this demand. But it's clear a long-term solution must be supported. So what steps is the Minister taking to increase the number of affordable homes to help this situation?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. The homelessness strategy will be published soon, so she doesn't have long to wait. And she characterises the situation well. We can fund sticking plasters, we can fund help, but in the end we have to get to the heart of the matter. Number one, build homes. Number two, make sure families have got enough money coming in to pay the rent. And that will be at the heart of our strategy.
Manira Willis.
Mr Speaker, with London councils now spending £5.5 million per day on temporary accommodation, it's clear that we need to build more social homes in London. Richmond Council has been prioritising sites it's selling for social housing. Would she
that is not bearable for them. So we have to get a grip of this. We'll have more to say on that in the homelessness strategy, and I look forward to engaging with her.
To requisition empty homes that have been empty for a long period of time for the use of temporary and emergency accommodations like ours.
Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for his important question. Of course, we all want to see empty homes brought out into use, and councils already have extensive powers in this area. My job as a local government minister is to make sure that we stabilise council funding so that they're able to invest in that action. But if he would like to engage with the department on powers that he would like to see, our door is very much open, Mr Speaker.
Desmond Murdoch.
Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Honourable...
Order. We're straight in line with the question, please. Mr Law, you could at least wait, Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'd like to thank the honourable gentleman for his question. The government will continue as we've published the strategy, guidance and toolkits to support local government to deliver their homelessness services.
James Murdoch.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Ministers will be well aware that amongst the most vulnerable people put into temporary accommodation, the maximum period of time that they should ever be placed is 6 weeks. What I've seen repeatedly in Basildon around the Labour-run Basildon Council is a tweaking and
My responsibility as the Homelessness Minister is to get the homelessness strategy published so that we can look at issues like those that he mentions, make sure that the guidance is good enough, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, get our country's children out of temporary accommodation and with a proper roof over their head.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just carry an interest as I formerly worked for a homeless charity in Harlow called Streets to Homes. What can the Minister tell me what the increased funding to tackle homelessness of £1 billion will do to help support local authorities? We've discussed also charities like Streets to Homes in Harlow and other charity groups to get people off the street and into secure tenancies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend for his question, and I would be grateful if he would take my very best wishes and thanks to that we're investing can stop homelessness. If a family or an individual do find themselves homeless, then that support can be there to get that person into a more stable situation and get them properly housed. It's every penny is worth it, because in the end, long-term homelessness costs the state more.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government is encouraging towns across the UK. Sorry. Question number 13.
13, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Areas across Scotland, including Elgin, will receive up to £20 million Pride in Place programme funding to transform their areas. Phase 1 places have already been identified. We're working with the Scotland Office and partners to confirm additional neighbourhoods that will be announced shortly for Phase 2.
Mr. Speaker, apologies. The government is encouraging towns across the UK to apply for Pride in Place funding, but with the specific exclusion that any town applying should not be located in a UK parliamentary constituency with a Phase 1 neighbourhood. Does the Minister appreciate that in my own constituency of Moray West Ayrn and Strathspey, this would exclude Nairn from applying because Elgin is already in receipt of funding, despite Nairn being in a different unitary authority and indeed not even being in the same constituency prior to boundary changes? It would also, as a further example, exclude Shetland from applying because Orkney already has funding. Does the Minister agree that this is nonsensical and discriminatory in large geographies and needs to be changed?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the big driver of the way that we are allocating funding is obviously deprivation. We're taking a slightly different approach in Scotland, where we've also looked at other indicators, including health indicators, to do that. As I said, we're working very closely at the moment with the Scotland Office and with local partners to make sure that we are getting Pride in Place programme into the areas that need it, and we will be announcing that allocation in due course.
Well done.
15, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is determined to end the injustice of leasehold entirely and will publish consultations before the end of this year on how we best implement the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act's new consumer protection provisions for residential freeholders and on options for reducing the prevalence of private estate management arrangements. We're also committed to ensuring that residential freeholders and leaseholders are protected from abuse and poor service at the hands of unscrupulous property agents.
Well done.
Thank the Minister for his response. At a recent public meeting, people living at the Chesil Reach and Grays Field development in Chickrell told me about the problems that they have been facing with the estate management company Firstport. Large increases to the service charge, little transparency and a failure to fulfil even the most basic obligations, all made so much worse because Firstport are truly terrible at responding to concerns when they are raised by the public. With all this in mind, can the Minister outline just what steps are being taken to hold Firstport to account for their many failings, and how can we deliver much stronger protections for everyone living in properties managed by Firstport?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that question. As he may be aware, in response to widespread concerns that were raised in a recent debate on property service charges, Mr. Speaker, I met with Martin King, Managing Director of Firstport, on the 17th of this month. In our meeting, I pressed Mr. King and his associates on a wide range of issues stemming from reports of poor service and left him in no doubt that in the government's view, Firstport's performance is not good enough. I intend to write to Firstport to follow up on the issues raised, and I'll happily deposit a copy of that letter in the library, Mr. Speaker.
Slade.
Mr. Speaker, I was contacted by residents of Camford Paddock who wrote to me about ongoing unregulated estate fees, in particular related to a suitable alternative natural green space, a SANG, that was a condition of the development as it's near a site of scientific interest. The SANG is a privately owned one in the BCP Council area, not managed by the council. So what protections exist for the residents there who are having to pay for a public site which is managed by a private developer?
I thank the honourable lady for that question. I referenced in my initial opening answer the consultation we intend to launch very soon relating to protections for residential freeholders from that type of charge where it's unreasonable. Those provisions in the 2024 Act provide for greater transparency. They allow homeowners on freehold estates to take the estate manager to the first tier tribunal if it's unreasonable rent charges are being levied. And as I said, she will have a chance and her constituents to feed into that consultation very soon.
Matthew. Question number 16. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The National Planning Policy Framework sets out a sequential approach to flood risk management, requiring inappropriate development to be directed away from areas at highest risk and providing strong safeguards where development is necessary in these areas. The updates to the framework made in December last year expanded the requirement for development to provide sustainable drainage systems, and statutory guidance accompanying building regulations promotes flood-resilient buildings in flood-prone areas through approved Document C.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the past week, I'm sure many of us have seen and felt the proof that our weather is becoming more extreme. That is why it's ever more important to be proactive and forward-thinking in our housing strategy. Does the Minister agree with me that sites like the old golf course site in Bradford and Avon, in my constituency of Melksham and Devon, not be included in local plans?
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question. I'd say a number of things. Firstly, local plans are tested for their soundness by the planning inspectorate. He will appreciate I can't comment on individual sites, but I again draw the House's attention, Mr. Speaker, to the very strong protections in national planning policy that mean development which could be vulnerable to flooding should not be allowed in areas of high flood risk.
Tom Rutland.
17, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Labour's Renters' Rights Act is the biggest strengthening of tenants' rights and protections in a generation. From the 1st of May 2026, 11 million renters in England will benefit from the changes this government is making, including an end to Section 21 no-fault evictions and preventing unfair rent hikes.
Rutland.
Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Secretary of State for his answer. In my constituency of East Worthing and Shoreham, more than 10,000 residents are privately renting, families, couples, friends and individuals who've too often been the victims of excessive rent hikes, no-fault evictions, substandard conditions and a private rented sector that benefits bad landlords and disadvantages fair landlords and good tenants. So can my right honourable friend tell me when the measures in the Renters' Rights Act will come into effect and give security to my constituents who privately rent?
Secretary of State.
I know that he is an outstanding advocate for his constituents in East Worthing and Shoreham. We will deliver our reforms in 3 phases. On the 1st of May next year, we'll implement reforms to reshape the tenancy system and remove barriers to renting, including abolishing Section 21 no-fault evictions, limiting rent increases to just once per year, and outlawing bidding wars. In addition, Awab's law and the Decent Homes Standard implementation dates are subject to consultation. Those 11 million renters across England and those he referred to in his constituency will not forget that the Conservatives and Reform UK voted against these important changes that will benefit renters right across this country.
Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recognise very much what the Minister is saying in relation to protection of those who rent houses. Desperation is the issue for many people who rent accommodation, find themselves in financial difficulties and living, as the honourable gentleman spoke earlier on. Can I ask the Minister to do this? Please, would the Minister speak to the relevant Minister DFC in relation to what government's doing here to ensure we in Northern Ireland can follow a pattern of thought and a focus of attention. Thank you.
State.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I recognise what he's saying there. The answers to it, of course, building more social and affordable housing and the supply of housing more generally. I am in fact due to meet with the relevant Minister from Northern Ireland to discuss these matters further, and I look forward to that.
Sir Hall.
Question number 19, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I'll take questions number 19 and 22 together. The Government published a policy statement on Thursday the 20th of November, which set out our plans for the 2026-27 to 2028-29 multi-year local government finance settlement. Through the settlement, we're introducing a system based on need and evidence. In doing so, we will target a greater proportion of grant funding towards deprived places.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Warrington, with one area ranked 899th, most deprived, and the highest 33,480th, a gap of over 32,500 places. These vast disparities are masked by population-weighted averages, with Warrington ranking 199th overall and only 43rd in range. Will the Minister ensure Fair Funding 2.0 truly reflects vast internal inequalities so that resources reach the communities most in need?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I have to say I admire my friends, not only in her standing up for Warrington, but also her command of the statistical detail there. The Fair Funding Review will distribute more funding to deprived areas. And as she has just demonstrated, this lower layer super output areas of 400, which means that we can account for pockets of deprivation within more affluent areas. More broadly, I'll happily work with her to make sure that we can stabilise Warrington Council's finances, and I'll make sure that officials are in touch with the Council.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cash-strapped councils like Bassett Law District Council saw under the previous government support grants slashed from a 66% funding commitment in 2011 to 25% in 2024. The compounded damage this has done to areas like mine can be calculated in multi-millions worth of pounds. Many authorities are on their knees. Can the Minister outline in greater detail how they'll be able to plan for the forthcoming year ahead?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my friend for her question. I know similarly that she always stands up for Bassett Law, and she always will. Councils are expected to see an average funding period. And across the department, we'll support district councils through this and in other ways. And I look forward to discussing this in detail with her and her council.
And the Messenger.
Speaker. Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service is funded by a formula that relies upon population density and sparsity figures from the 2001 census. Since 2001, Cambridgeshire has grown by over 150,000 people and 30,000 new homes, making it one of the leanest per head in the country. And we've effectively built a city the size of Cambridge in Cambridgeshire since 2001 and given it no further funding. Over-reliance on council tax to bridge funding gaps undermines the core principle of risk-based resource allocation. So what assurances can the Minister give me that the Fairer Funding Review 2.0 won't require the difference to be made up by simply increasing the council tax preset by the maximum?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And he particularly mentions fire, and myself and the Minister responsible keeping this issue under review, and happy to hear further from him if he's got concerns about it.
The chance.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rural counties like Herefordshire face additional costs in delivering services because of rurality. Extra cost pressures mean that we need another 35 million next year to provide the same services, but it looks like the Fair Funding Review will spend £12 million. Does the Minister recognise the Fair Funding Review properly allocates the funding that rural communities is a fair way?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. When it comes to rural areas, public services do have those particular challenges to deal with. When it comes to council spending in areas of demand like adult social care, this government has increased funding for that, and we need to make sure that all councils are able to be financially stable and develop the way that they deliver public services, particularly thinking about the challenges she mentions.
Right, topical, Samuel. Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the general election last year, Labour promised the biggest boost to renters' rights and protections in a generation. Earlier this month, our historic Renters' Rights Act gained royal assent and will transform private renting for 11 million renters in England. The reforms will be introduced in 3 phases. The first phase, including abolishing Section 21 no-fault evictions, will come into effect on the 1st of May 2026. Those 11 million renters will never forget that Reform UK and the Conservatives oppose these changes that will massively benefit their security in remaining in the homes that they love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The hospitality industry in South Shields has really struggled over the last year. There are now deep concerns that I share about the imposition of a tourism tax. Can my right honourable friend explain what assessment he has made of such a tax's impact on beautiful little coastal tourist towns like mine?
Well, she tempts me to venture into terrain which is properly within the decision-making jurisdiction of the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and she only has to wait 48 hours to find out what the Chancellor has decided. So I suggest she asks the Chancellor on Wednesday rather than me this afternoon.
News in between. James Cleverly, Shadow Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, the Chancellor, even the Secretary of State himself have said they will not touch hands in this Parliament. Does he not recognise that a new evaluation or a surcharge would be a de facto breach of that commitment, and will he therefore rule it out?
Yeah. Well, again, much as I'd like to comment on matters that are properly within the budget, he will know that there is a very long-standing convention that prevents me from doing that.
James Cleverly. So,
all he had to do was repeat his earlier commitments. He chose not to do so. Labour's unfair funding review shows that they are consciously starving well-run councils of money and penalising councils that have kept council tax low and subsidising his political friends in high-spending, wasteful Labour-run councils. How on earth can the Secretary of State justify this blatant party political decision?
Well, he will remember former colleagues of his being caught on video boasting about how they were taking money away from poorer areas and giving it instead to wealthier parts of the country that needed it less. What this government is doing in fair funding is ensuring that funding is aligned with need and with deprivation, and that is the right thing to do.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Speaker. Out of sync. Look, following on from the previous question, Luton saw local services decimated after years of Conservative decisions that stripped consideration of deprivation and need from the funding formula. But under a fairer funding system, Luton is set to gain. So, can I ask the Secretary of State, with regards to the fairer funding formula, what we can expect to see in places like Luton that had suffered so badly under the Conservative government?
Minister. Who wants it? Secretary Minister.
Thank you, Secretary of State, and I'd like to thank my friend for her question. Under our new approach to funding, in places like Luton that were starved of the resources that they needed for far too long, where we can evidence significant levels of deprivation, councils can expect to see the resources they need to help people properly.
Gideon Amos, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The planning bill takes smaller decisions away from councillors. Last week's direction announced in the ministerial statement will take big decisions like Oldway Road, decisions over 150 homes, or like Oldway Road in Wellington, out of the hands of local councillors. Does the government no longer trust local people to shape the communities and deliver the housing that we need?
Minister.
Well, I say gently to the honourable gentleman, I think he misrepresents the proposal that's been announced. It's not an automatic removal of all planning applications over 150. It's simply a referral process that allows the Secretary of State, as applies in other situations already, to call individual applications in.
Gurinder Singh Josam.
Speaker, I recently met with representatives of BU UK, a multi-utility infrastructure provider constructing and operating essential utility assets with the ability to provide all utilities as a one-stop shop. In view of the Department's progress on new towns and the need to rapidly scale up house building, what consideration has the Department given to utilising innovative delivery models like that of BU UK of site-wide deployment of utility infrastructure, thus reducing bureaucracy, streamlining delivery, improving accountability and allowing house builders to get on and build it?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank my honourable friend for that question? The government obviously recognises the importance of ensuring that new housing development is supported by appropriate infrastructure. In respect to the individual company references, Mr. Speaker, I'll ask my officials to reach out to them directly to discuss their delivery model and find out a bit about the potential advantages it might bring.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Planning Inspectorate recently overturned a decision by North East Lincolnshire Council for a development in New Waltham in my constituency. Objections sent to previous report, the inspector said that he acknowledged that the nearby roundabout was over capacity, but said that an increase from 100% to 107% would make very little difference. Clearly, local residents disagree. Would the Minister acknowledge that public confidence in the process...
Can I just help members? We are on topicals. We are stretching the questions.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question. Again, he'll appreciate, due to the quasi-judicial nature of the planning system, I can't comment on individual applications. I am aware of concerns that have been raised by members across the House about holding directions, in particular issued by National Highways. He may be aware of the reforms we're making to the statutory consultation system as a whole, and we're out to consultation on that now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency of Sherwood Forest, we've had new housing development, including Edwinstowe and Reneth. So does the Minister agree with me that when these sites are developed, local authorities and housing companies should ensure appropriate infrastructure in place, whether it's GP surgeries, schools or shops, because in the past this hasn't happened, including in Hucknall?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. She's absolutely right. Local development plans should address needs and opportunities in relation to infrastructure. When preparing a local plan, local planning authorities encourage that, in fact, they're under a duty to bring forward infrastructure funding statements. We realise that there's more to be done, however, to ensure that we get the right infrastructure built in the right time as a development proceeds.
Andrew George.
Speaker, Cornwall is not a NIMBY location. It's almost trebled its housing stock in the last 60 years. Indeed, it's one of the fastest growing places in the United Kingdom. And yet, in spite of all that, the housing problems of local people have got worse. So, as the government imposes housing figures on local authorities, in the case of Cornwall, what will they do to ensure that the local authority has the power to deliver the homes which we need, rather than delivering developers' greed?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question. A topical one that I just recently met with members and officials from Cornwall Council, also honourable friends on my own side, banging the drum for new homes in Cornwall, particularly social and affordable homes. There is ongoing work, including conversations taking place with Homes England about how we can better support Cornwall to bring forward the homes they need.
Mr. Strathern.
Speaker, if it comes forward, Tempsford Newtown would offer an opportunity to get infrastructure right while building the crucial homes we need, in stark contrast to the chaotic approach to development seen by far too many of my Bedfordshire towns and villages. If it does proceed, will the Minister meet with me to ensure we engage on how we can maximise the infrastructure benefits, not just for Tempsford, but for my existing communities that are already feeling the strain?
I would be more than happy to meet my honourable friend to discuss this and other matters of importance to him in his locality. He's a doughty champion for ensuring, Mr. Speaker, that as we bring forward new homes, we get the essential infrastructure and amenities in place as well.
I recently met with the Minister of Water to discuss the Independent Water Commission's recommendation that we adopt pre-pipe solutions to prevent rainwater further overflowing our sewage system. Will the Minister meet with myself and Cabinet colleagues to make rainwater harvesting mandatory on home builds and major developments?
If memory serves, Mr. Speaker, I answered another question from the honourable gentleman on precisely this topic. He knows I think we're out to consultation on the matter. If he wants to write to me in the first instance with further details about the type of changes he is seeking, I'd be more than happy to respond.
Member Martin.
In cities like Portsmouth, outdated formulas for local authority funding have long failed to reflect the real levels of deprivation. I'd like to see a Labour government with a fairer system using up-to-date data to increase support for children's services. This, Mr. Speaker, will make enormous difference to my constituents. Can the Minister meet with me to ensure that funding allocation is being considered for Portsmouth to finally receive the funding it deserves?
Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I very happily meet with my friend. She's an incredibly powerful champion for Portsmouth, and I'd be very happy to meet with her and discuss her council's funding.
Blake Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government has said it wants to improve standards in public life, which I entirely agree with. At a recent council meeting, the leader of Milton Keynes Council swore and was abusive following the speech of a 16-year-old resident. Does the Secretary of State agree that that behaviour is totally unacceptable?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've recently put forward our response on improving standards, and we're looking for an opportunity to take this forward for the reasons he mentioned.
Brian Leishman.
Mr. Speaker, I have residents from Tillicoochee who have not had access to their homes for 2 years because of RAC. Their lives have been turned upside down. And a year ago, the Scottish Government were given the largest settlement figure in the history of devolution, but haven't helped my residents. Can the Secretary of State inform me what discussions his department have had regarding residential RAC with Scottish Government counterparts?
Who wants that? Secretary of State.
I mean, he raises a very important point. I'll be happy to write to him with details of our engagement with the Scottish Government.
Sorry, Will. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A more dynamic and active housing market, unblocking pathways to home ownership and boosting local businesses by up to £1.2 billion. Now, I'm sure if someone offered these to the Secretary of State, he'd bite their hand off. So why, when these are the benefits of scrapping stamp duty on homes, isn't he lobbying the Chancellor to do just that on Wednesday?
Well done, Sarah. First day.
Well, I mean, they foisted Liz Truss on us as Prime Minister, and I'm very surprised that they failed to learn from the disaster that unfunded commitments you've got no idea how to pay for only cause trouble to the economy, including to the housing economy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cornwall has been campaigning for fair funding for years under successive Tory and Lib Dem governments. We are so pleased with the Fair Funding Formula 2.0. There have been some consultation changes. Could the Secretary of State please confirm that these won't disadvantage Cornwall and we will get that increased fair funding which we deserve?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with Cornwall Labour members of Parliament standing up for Cornwall in this House as they are, I feel assured that Cornwall will be in a much better place, and I look forward to working with her to make sure that that's the case.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Flooding costs the UK economy up to £6 billion a year. Aviva estimates that in Bognor Regis and Littlehampton alone, 2,000 more homes will be at risk of surface water flooding by 2050, as well as 115,000 of the government's planned 1.5 million new homes. And that's why flood resilience is a growth issue. So can the Minister tell me what he is doing to ensure that new homes are flood resilient to protect both my constituents and the UK economy?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Honourable Lady for that question. As I made clear in reference to a previous question, there are very strong protections in national planning policy that mean development which could be vulnerable to flooding should not be allowed in areas of high flood risk. Where local planning authorities have approved development, in spite of initial objections, for example, from the Environment Agency, they will have had to have made sure that the development would be safe, for example, through adequate mitigations.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank both the Secretary of State and the Minister of State for Housing and Planning for visiting Ebbsfleet, Garden City, in my constituency last week. Would the Minister agree with me that with an additional 10,000 homes to be built in Ebbsfleet over the next 10 years, we must ensure that to create great places to live, we've got to build schools, medical facilities and green spaces?
One Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his question, Mr. Speaker. We fully appreciate the importance of finishing Ebbsfleet Central, and while I cannot preempt the department's business planning, he can be assured that his championing of Ebbsfleet Garden Village will ensure that it receives the support it requires through the new...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Minister confirm what oversight the department has of the central government grant given to Horton Borough Council and Merseyflow for the two bridges in Runcorn, bearing in mind that a substantial proportion has gone unspent in recent years? And what steps are being taken to ensure any unspent funds are used transparently?
The Honourable Lady, I'm afraid, will have to write to me and outline which fund she's precisely talking about, but I'm more than happy to get back to her if she does.
Whereas, Mr. Speaker, given that the whole of Cornwall, one of the most deprived regions in Northern Europe, missed out on Pride in Place funding, I can only assume that this was due to the trusting your neighbour indicator being treated as a marker of affluence rather than deprivation in the Community Needs Index. Can the Minister confirm that Cornwall will not be disadvantaged because of trusting your neighbour in the next tranche of Pride in Place funding?
Minister. Mr. Speaker, thank you to my honourable friend, always the champion of Cornwall. I mean, just to confirm, there were two things that drove the allocation, indices of multiple deprivation and our Community Needs Index. Pride in Place funding is within our strategy and can grip in order to drive the change they want to see, and I hope we will see that in Cornwall.
Rishi Sunak.
The Great Ayton Allotments Group received funding
from the Community Ownership Fund last year. As the deadline for dispersing the funds approaches, delays in a related planning application are threatening that funding. Can I thank department officials for trying to resolve this, and could I ask ministers to support that flexibility, because this project means a great deal to the community of Great Ayton?
Thank you to the Right Honourable Member for raising the important work that's being done in his constituency. We will continue to work with that group because we want to ensure that all communities have the ability to grip assets and to drive the change they want to see.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For years, Derby residents have felt the full force of Tory austerity, with many services at breaking point. Does the Minister agree that Derby deserves better, and what can they do to ensure the fair funding review delivers for communities like Derby?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think councils up and down the country, city like Derby, and with him as their MP, they won't want for a brilliant champion.
Sir James Hunt. Jeremy Hunt.
Speaker, can I thank the Housing Minister for his constructive meeting last week on the Community Infrastructure Levy. Could he tell the House whether Liberal Democrat-controlled councils like mine in Waverley should be charging the Community Infrastructure Levy to private householders who do a straightforward extension on their house?
Minister.
I don't want to repeat, particularly because it's topical, as Mr. Speaker, the extensive conversation he has. He knows that we are making good faith efforts to resolve this issue and to bring some redress forward for his freeholders.
Andy Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hillingdon Council has applied for exceptional financial support due to years of underfunding under the previous government and local financial mismanagement. Will the Minister assure me that as part of our updated funding criteria, councils like Hillingdon will get more funding that they need, and there'll also be improved accountability requirements on local councils?
Minister.
Thank you. Are facing, which are really serious and important, and I'll be in touch with him very soon so that we can discuss it extensively.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is Surrey going to get a mayor?
Who's having it, Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Look, we are working with all areas to make sure that we are devolving power, whether that is to strategic authorities or to mayors, to make sure that they can grip the economic opportunities in their place and unlock the growth that we didn't see under the last government, but we absolutely want to deliver under this government.
Renee Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cheshire East Council has severe pockets of deprivation centred largely around my constituency of Crewe and Nantwich. However, under the previous government, local government funding allocations never really took account of those deprivations. So will the Minister meet with me to discuss how we can rebalance funding towards those deprived areas in my constituency that have been left behind for 2 years?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll happily meet with my friend. Great railway towns like Crewe ought to be invested in, and he will have heard from previous questions in this session that the new measure of deprivation uses fine-grained data so we can identify those areas, pockets of deprivation like in Crewe at Nantwich, and I look forward to talking with him at length about it.
In room.
Speaker, in rural areas like mine in North Devon, private renting is very expensive and unaffordable. To ensure more housing is available at which people can simply just not afford.
Minister.
Thank the honourable gentleman for that question. We are ensuring, for example, that through the new 39 billion social and affordable homes programme, the type of homes that need extra grant funding have that flexibility. That would include rural housing as an example.
Final question, Winnie Moore.
Mr. Speaker, what is grey belt, and can the Minister tell us what assessment has he made of the risk it poses to the integrity of the green belt in areas such as mine?
Minister.
The right honourable lady continues to ask me what grey belt is, and I continue to refer her. Google is her friend in this instance. I continue to refer her to the planning practice guidance that covers exactly what it means.
Right, let the front benches change over. Right, we now come to the urgent question. Shadow Secretary of State Alex Burkhardt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Prime Minister to make a statement on the Ministerial Code.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker,
Trust in government and in politics is at an all-time low. For my constituents in Makerfield, in Wigan, and others across the country, there is a crisis of faith and trust. It is incumbent on all of us across this House to fix and to restore it. The Prime Minister has always been clear. Serving this country is what we exist to do, and the ethic of service must always guide all of us. We are committed to restoring trust in government by ensuring ministers are held to the highest standards. That is why the Prime Minister strengthened the ministerial code when this government came into office, and why he has put the Nolan Principles back onto the face of the code. The ministerial code is a statement of values, not just a set of rules and guidance. Because public service is an immense privilege, this government has implemented changes to raise the standards expected of ministers. This includes giving new powers to the independent advisor, who can now initiate investigations without the risk of veto. The new code also closed loopholes on gifts and hospitality. Are now published on a monthly basis across this House. We have also doubled the frequency of publication of information about ministers' interests from twice yearly to quarterly. The Prime Minister further strengthened the ministerial code last month to implement reforms in relation to ministerial severance payments. And just last month, we set up the Ethics and Integrity Commission, as promised in our manifesto, and we reformed the business appointment rules system. The reforms introduced on ministerial severance payments ensure payments are proportionate and fair. Before the government introduced these reforms, we saw thousands of pounds of public money going to waste after being claimed again and again and again by members opposite in the last Parliament. As members of the House will no doubt remember, it did not matter whether former Conservative ministers were reappointed or, in the worst cases, forced to resign due to unacceptable behaviour. But I digress, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, it's a question which aspect of the code the honourable member wishes to ask about. As for the Prime Minister, restoring public confidence and trust in this House and in the government across the country is a defining mission. We will continue to seek to uphold standards in public life as we deliver and serve this great country.
As I say, I thank the Minister for coming today and being sent here. Once again, I'm reminding ministers of the requirement in the government's own ministerial code that major announcements should be made in the House in the first instance and not the media. I understand that the media announcements must be managed carefully, as long as the expectations remain as they are in the ministerial code. And that is the problem. It is the ministerial code that's been broken. I will continue to uphold the rights of this House and its members to be treated with respect and to be first to hear any major announcements. And unfortunately, some ministers decided to make comment last week, when I also had to criticise, where they said something about having a bugle. Well, the point is, those ministers need to learn, maybe they ought to learn the facts of the ministerial code before they make comments in the media. Alex Burkhardt.
Look, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for granting this urgent question. Look, I mean no offence to the Parliamentary Secretary, because I've been in his shoes, but look, when the government sends a junior minister out to answer a very, very serious question, it's normally because they have something to hide. And in this case, it's clear that the government has a very great deal to hide. We have had a whole series of scandals since the summer break, Mr. Speaker, and there have recently been a number of apparent breaches of the ministerial code, in addition to the one that you raised with issue to 9.1 of the ministerial code, which is about making sure that this House hears about serious announcements first. We've seen pre-budget briefing become entirely endemic, to the point where the government has successfully spooked the markets in advance of the Chancellor's speech. Goodness knows how they will react when they actually hear the Chancellor's speech. Will the Minister at least condemn these briefings? Even more seriously, 1.6f of the Ministerial Code. Ministers must ensure that no conflict of interest arises or could reasonably be perceived to arise. But in the case of David Cogan and the Prime Minister, it's clear that a perceived conflict has arisen. Mr Cogan told Select Committee on the 7th of May that he donated money to the Prime Minister's leadership campaign before the Prime Minister appointed him as football regular. Surely, given the circumstances, full transparency is required. How much money did the Prime Minister receive from Mr Cogan? We also have the absurd situation of the Prime Minister clearing the Culture Secretary of wrongdoing in this case, despite the fact that the Prime Minister should have recused himself. How did this happen? Over the weekend, the Prime Minister said that ministers know that if there's any issue, they must refer themselves to the independent adviser. Has the Prime Minister referred himself? If not, this is pure hypocrisy otherwise. And lastly, criminal convictions do not have to be disclosed. Will the Minister reassure the House that this government will reveal any criminal convictions that ministers have, and is he able to confirm that no current minister does have a criminal conviction?
Minister.
Well, can I thank the honourable member opposite for his series of questions connected, I think, by virtue of being in relation to the ministerial code. To separate us from them, things happen in politics, things go wrong and people misbehave. But the difference between us and them is that whenever something's come up, we have always followed processes and then acted. That's why the Prime Minister the ministerial code and put public service at its heart, and he has strengthened the advisor. And I notice that the honourable member is not joined by the Foreign Secretary, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, who, when faced with bullying claims and having broken the ministerial code, the former Prime Minister, to whom he was a PPS, did not sack her. He made his independent adviser on standards quit instead. I notice he's also not joined by the Shadow Housing Secretary, who called a north-east town not that far from me I won't repeat the word. So we will not be taking lectures from the members opposite, who were roundly rejected by the public for having corroded trust in politics.
Right, Phil Brittle.
Speaker, may I commend the Minister for saying quite clearly that it's right that we shouldn't be taking lessons from the party opposite. What more can he say about the reforms that will come through following the establishment of the Ethics and Integrity Commission to make sure that former ministers are not able to trade on their knowledge through the revolving door? Because for once we've seen actually that with the scrapping of a COBA, previously derised as a toothless regulator, that there are going to be far stronger safeguards on former ministers and taking up jobs in the private sector.
Minister.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for his question? I know he's done a lot of work to look into and promote some of these important reforms. This was a manifesto promise that we made to establish the Ethics and Integrity Commission, and it is now a manifesto promise kept. We have abolished ACOBA, and that means that there will be financial penalties for ex-ministers who are breaking any rules on jobs. That is something the former Prime Minister, opposite, to whom the member asking the question today was a PPS, will surely be furious about.
Aberdeen Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it seems that this question has been in part fuelled by the pre-budget briefing, which does seem particularly rampant on this occasion. But I would argue that this is a symptom of wider dysfunction in our budget scrutiny process more generally. Parliament is generally relegated to the sidelines. It has no real power to challenge or amend like other democracies does. And so I'd like to ask the Minister whether he will look to review the UK budget scrutiny process and see what we can learn from other countries. And in addition to that, with the ministerial code more broadly, would he look to enshrine that code into law? And will he also look at the role of the ethics advisor and ensure that it's truly independent, able to initiate its own investigation, come to its own conclusions and publish its reports in its own time?
Well, can I thank the honourable member opposite? We have no plans to put the ministerial code on a statutory footing to address that question. It sets out the Prime Minister's expectations of his or her ministers. document directed by the Prime Minister, and that's been the approach of many governments. I also, to respond, Mr. Speaker, I can assure you that the government and I take their obligations to this House very seriously. Before I was elected, I regularly read about what was going to be in the budget before the papers, and that's why I think, to answer the honourable member's question, it is right that the Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee, I believe, are currently carrying out an inquiry into ministerial statements and the ministerial code. The government has already engaged with that inquiry and looks forward to considering the committee's report in full and any recommendations that it might have.
It was me that actually asked for the report, just to be helpful. Adam Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know that my constituents in Erewash haven't forgotten following the rules during lockdown, only to find out that the previous government, who set those rules, were having raucous, drunken parties in the corridors of power. I greatly welcome this government strengthening the ministerial code and ensuring that our nation's leaders are properly held to account. What is the Minister's response, then, to those who served in that previous government, today having the brass neck to lecture this government on standards in public life?
Quite right, absolutely, quite right.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for that powerful point? It is somewhat ironic that the man who was a PPS to the Prime Minister, who did so much to corrode trust in government, under that Prime Minister, as opposed to this one, not one, but 2 independent advisers resigned from their posts because they did not feel able to conduct their inquiries. I will not take lectures from the party opposite on standards in public life.
Simon Hodger of the Select Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I ask the Minister, when did the Prime Minister realise his preferred candidate to be regulator had donated to his leadership campaign? From whom did the Prime Minister seek advice when he learnt this? What was the nature of the advice in response? And in particular, what advice was the Prime Minister given with regards to A, his continuing involvement in the process, and B, his ability to be effectively judge and jury on the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. And notwithstanding what the Minister has rightly said with regards to the status of the Ministerial Code, authored in and policed by Downing Street, given the problems which successive governments have had with regards to these issues, isn't it now time for serious consideration to be given for the Ministerial Code to be brought under the orbit and auspices of this place and not number 10?
Well, can I thank the honourable member opposite for his question? On the independent football regulator appointment, he may be aware that the Prime Minister wrote to the independent adviser on ministerial interests, setting out in detail his involvement in the process and the recusal arrangements that were in place. That in retrospect, it would have been better if he had not been given a note on the appointment. He's expressed his sincere regret. And, Mr. Speaker, I would draw the House's attention to the independent adviser's conclusion that the disclosures made by the Prime Minister are an important demonstration of the Prime Minister's commitment to transparency and to ensuring that mistakes are acknowledged and necessary to underlying the maintenance of standards in public life.
It's clear that trust in politicians from all parties is too low, and that's why I really welcome setting up the Ethics and Integrity Commission. But just for the avoidance of doubt and to place it on the public record, can my honourable friend confirm for me his view on the ethics of accepting bribes from Russia to ask questions as an elected member of any parliament?
Ask him.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for that question? I was truly shocked to read about those revelations, and I would direct that question to honourable members opposite. When I saw the honourable members opposite in the last government trash the reputation of the public with government, was running a charity and having my first child, and I was furious about it. We always can do more as politicians and as a government to restore trust in politics, and I welcome those who
Mr. Speaker, the independent by the Prime Minister, it's a genuine question for the whole House whether that model is still fit for purpose. And let's say, and hopefully it wouldn't happen to the current advisor, they were incapacitated or ill. What happens then? Do we all sort of wait for many, many months? So maybe a new model is to consider bringing together, having 3 ministerial advisors, advisors the Prime Minister on ministerial standards, in order, if one is incapacitated, then obviously the 2 step in, or if there is deadlock in any agreement, that there is actually a casting vote. But the Prime Minister currently appointing this particular individual to oversee the highest standards of integrity in public life is no longer fit for purpose, clearly.
Well, can I thank the honourable member opposite for his question? To my mind, in the end, you cannot get away from the character of the Prime Minister and his relationship to, or her relationship to, that appointment. What matters is if that post is vacant. Unlike with the previous government, it is not allowed to remain vacant, it is appointed, and that person is respected. And that is exactly what this Prime Minister has done and will always do, because in the end, the Prime Minister believes that restoring standards in public life and restoring trust in this House and in democracy is the most important mission for this government.
Chris Vins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I personally thank you and from the people of Harlow for allowing us backbenchers to get a voice in Parliament. It's really important on these issues. Last month, the government set up the Ethics and Integrity Commission, which I clearly welcome. I wonder if the Minister can touch a little bit more on the scope and remit of that and to ensure we avoid things like the Partygate scandal in future.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for that question? The Ethics and Integrity Commission was a vital part of our manifesto commitment to restoring trust in government. Its scope has been set out clearly in the public domain, and it will, over time, establish its reputation as a core driver of standards across the state, across government and the public sector. And I look forward to the next series of publications that are coming later this year.
Ellen Morgan.
Much, Mr. Speaker. One potential breach of the ministerial code is the briefing to the papers, but not to this House, that the government will pay a major increase to pharmaceutical companies, seemingly at the behest of Donald Trump. Can the Minister confirm today that people who are worried about their local health services won't see a huge amount of money going to pharmaceutical companies at the behest of an outside player? And will he furthermore ask the Secretary of State for Health and Care to come to the House and explain that to us in full?
Yeah.
Well, can I thank the honourable member for that question? I can assure you that given the respect that the government pays to this House and to its obligations in it, if there is an important policy announcement to be made, it will be made to this House. But if she writes for me with more details about that, I'm happy to look into it and happy to talk to the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care.
Right, Francois. I'm baffled. Right, Francois.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. I listened carefully to the Minister's rather Kafkaesque reply. But can I ask him a technical question? Given that the Prime Minister oversees the code, and the Prime Minister appoints the independent advisor, when the independent advisor reports, who adjudicates whether or not to take further action? Because it could be argued the Prime Minister has a vested interest. Should another minister take that decision? Perhaps the Health Secretary? Or does he have a vested interest too?
Well, in this country, we have a political constitution. It is one of the great strengths of this country. And ultimately, therefore, the Prime Minister answers to this House, and this House answers to the people.
The former Environment Secretary, now Housing Secretary, claimed at the Dispatch book just a few months ago that, quote, water pollution levels in Scotland are worse than they are in England. When it was pointed out that this was completely untrue, rather than apologising, he doubled down repeatedly. Now the UK Statistics Authority has rebuked him, saying his claims lacked enough transparency and they'd run the risk of misleading the public. The ministerial code is clear that he should correct the record. Does the Minister agree?
Well, can I thank the honourable member for drawing my attention to that issue? I don't know the details about it, but I'm happy to look into it and to refer that to the Secretary of State for Housing, Local Government and Communities.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to try, I think, a fourth time. We know that the football regulator, the chap who's now in charge, donated to the Labour Party, to both the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State before he was appointed. So at what point did the Prime Minister personally know signing off a Labour donor to be chair of the football regulator.
Mr Speaker, my right honourable friend and neighbour, the member for Wigan, the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, has set out already in extensive detail to the House the background to the appointment of David Cogan as the chair of the Independent Football Regulator. The Secretary of State also responded comprehensively to the recent report by the Commissioner of Public Appointments. She acknowledged the findings of the report, accepted responsibility for an unknowing breach related to previous donations, and explained that she will ensure that lessons are learned from this process. As I mentioned earlier, with the conclusion that his disclosures are an important commitment to transparency.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The Prime Minister agreed with the Independent Adviser on Ministerial Interests to recuse himself from the appointment of the football regulator in autumn 2024. Then in April this year, as the Public Appointments Commissioner reports makes very clear, he confirmed Mr. So how much did the Prime Minister receive in donations from Mr Cogan?
The Prime Minister acknowledged, as I've said before, that in retrospect it would have been better if he'd not been given a note on the appointment or confirmed that he was content with the appointment. He has expressed his sincere regret for what was an unfortunate error.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, the Minister says that the Prime Minister is committed to transparency. So how much did Mr Cogan give to the Prime Minister's leadership campaign?
As I say, the Prime Minister did acknowledge that in retrospect it would have been better if he'd not been given a note on the appointment or confirmed that he was content with it. That is why he has expressed his sincere regret for what was an unfortunate error.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Thank you, Mr Speaker. As my honourable friend, the member for North Shropshire, said, dealing with the Department of Health and Social Care over the last year or so has been an exercise in opacity. One thing that we have struggled with has been the 50% cuts to NHS integrated care boards. This has left honourable members from across the House having to piece together the facts from the media. Can the Minister which NHS services will lose funding to pay for the $1 billion has created?
Relevant to the question, actually. Don't worry, let's try somebody who might be. Louis French.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Prime Minister boasted to ITV at the weekend that he had strengthened the ministerial code and the powers of the ethics advisor, and any minister who makes a mistake must knowingly refer themselves to the advisor. Himself to the advisor for breaching the ministerial code, for breaching the ministerial code, or is this just more Labour double standards?
Can I thank the honourable member for his question? The Independent Adviser on Appointments is the person that the Prime Minister wrote to about his own ministerial interest to be very clear about the involvement in the process that he had and the recusal arrangements in Price. And he has expressed his sincere regret for what was an unfortunate error.
So this Mehdi.
Today, the Welsh Local Government Association has warned that next year's Welsh local government settlement still fails to meet structural pressures on Welsh councils. That's the stark backdrop of this upcoming budget. Does the Minister recognise that the pre-budget circus of leaks, briefings and chaotic U-turns in number 10 has only made it harder for already struggling councils to plan ahead and deliver their essential services?
I'm not going to comment on speculation about the ongoing budget process. The Chancellor will come to the House on Wednesday and deliver a budget that will put money into the pockets of working people, tackling the cost of living crisis, protect the NHS and get debt down.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Minister said in his statement that the government's defining mission is to uphold the highest. With these simple questions about transparency, he's failing to answer them. How much in donation from Dave Cogan, and did he adhere to the process, the ministerial code, in declaring them?
Well, I will sound like a stuck record, but it is true that the Prime Minister wrote to the independent adviser on ministerial interests, setting out his involvement in the process, and he did acknowledge that, in retrospect, it would have been better had he not been given a note on the appointment or confirmed that he was content, and he has expressed his sincere regret for what was an unfortunate error.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. Can we just ask, how can the Minister justify, or how can the Minister justify that the former Deputy Prime Minister received severance pay after she had to resign in disgrace?
Well, as the honourable member opposite knows, we have changed that policy, and when the policy comes into force at the end of October, it will be applied to all future situations such as that.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to try to speak really, really slowly, and just no multiple questions, just the one. How much cash did David give the Prime Minister?
Answer. The Prime Minister wrote to the independent adviser on ministerial interests, setting out his involvement in the process and the recusal arrangements in place. He has since expressed his sincere regret for what was an unfortunate error.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we just want the transparency that was promised to be delivered. Seriously, Minister, I mean, it's an impossible task that's come to him as a junior minister, but this House surely deserves to know the funding, the cash that was transferred from someone who's now been given this £130,000 a year part-time sinecure to the Prime Minister. And if the Minister has been told and is being told by the Chairman of the Labour Party right now not to answer, can he undertake, if he won't answer, and make sure that we are given an answer? We are entitled to be given an honest answer by a government and a minister who are supposedly committed to transparency.
Well, as I say, after the Prime Minister wrote to the independent adviser on ministerial interests, he then expressed his sincere regret for what was an unfortunate error.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Minister very much for his statement, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for all that you do to ensure that the ministerial code is followed by all ministers in this House, and we appreciate that. There has been much discussion this year regarding ministerial code and how major policy announcements are made in this House. What steps will the Minister take to ensure that members can have confidence that ministers will adhere to this code and other requirements set out within it that ensure correct working order for this House?
Well, can I thank the honourable member opposite for that question and correct myself. I hadn't realised, Mr. Speaker, that it was you who directed the Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee to carry out that investigation, but it is an important inquiry into how ministerial statements and the ministerial code works in practice, which is clearly a problem. The government's already engaged with the content of that inquiry and looks forward to considering the report that the committee produces and any recommendations in it.
That completes the urgent question. First one, Minister. Well done. Now come to the next urgent question. You're right. Yeah, you did well. We come to the next urgent question. Nick Timothy.
Speaker, to ask the Secretary of State for the Home Department to make a statement on the intelligence used by West Midlands Police that led to the ban on Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from attending Villa Park on the 6th of November 2025.
Can I congratulate the honourable gentleman on securing this urgent question? Let me begin by acknowledging the concern and disappointment felt by supporters affected by the decision regarding attendance at Villa Park on the 6th of November. I recognise the strength of feeling within this House and the wider communities on this matter. As members will appreciate, operational decisions regarding public safety at football matches are a matter for the police, working closely with local partners and event organisers. In this case, West Midlands Police, in consultation with the club and the local safety advisory group, made the recommendation to advise that away fans should not attend, based on their assessment of the intelligence available to them at the time. I'm sure the House will understand that I'm limited in what I can say about the specific intelligence underpinning this decision. These are sensitive matters, and it's vital that the police act on information received to protect public safety. The West Midlands Police issued a statement in response to the latest media reporting on the intelligence they used, and are carrying out a debrief of the events leading up to the match, and will be publishing the timeline of events, the decisions taken, and the rationale for the recommendations that were provided to the Safety Advisory Group. In light of recent events and to ensure robust oversight, the Home Secretary has commissioned His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary for Fire and Rescue Services to review how police forces in England and Wales provide risk assessment advice to local safety advisory groups and other bodies responsible for licensing high-profile public events. This inspection will consider whether police advice takes proper account of all relevant factors, including the impact on wider community relations, and whether the balance between public safety and community considerations is being struck effectively. I want to assure members that understanding the series of events that occurred in the period before the match was played, and the remain, of course, to the Home Secretary. The government, or indeed in wider society, we are committed to ensuring that fans can attend matches safely, regardless of background or affiliation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The ban on Israeli Jewish supporters was a disgrace, but the justification given by West Midlands Police, it turns out, was based on fiction. The police said their intelligence came from Dutch counterparts after the Ajax Maccabi Tel Aviv match last year. West Midlands Police called the Israeli fans, quote, highly organised, coordinated, experienced fighters linked to the Israel Defence Forces. They said they intentionally targeted Muslim communities, and 5,000 convicted by an official Dutch report and the Dutch police, and obviously inaccurate. In some cases, such as the Israeli victim thrown into the river, the facts were inverted, with Israelis presented as aggressors. West Midlands Police repeated their claims to the Home Affairs Select Committee chairman on Friday, and they refused to answer specific questions from the Sunday Times or justify their claims. So will the Minister ensure the publication of all intelligence material, it's mostly not sensitive, it can be redacted where necessary, relating to the ban? Will lists of individuals and organisations consulted by West Midlands Police and the Safety Advisory Group and all those who submitted evidence be published? Can the Minister confirm no organisations linked to the Muslim Brotherhood or organisations subject to government non-engagement participated? Can she confirm the Hind Rajab Foundation submitted a paper and that this was accepted by West Midlands Police? What intelligence was shared by West Midlands Police with the UK Football Policing Unit and National Police Chiefs Council? Which information was given to Home Office ministers and officials, and when? Officials were told of the options under consideration on the 2nd of October, 2 weeks before the ban was announced. So what did ministers do in the intervening period? Mr. Speaker, under pressure from Islamist agitators, local politicians and thugs, an English police force is accused of fabricating intelligence and misleading the public. This could hardly be more serious. We need ministers to hold the Chief Constable to account and give the country the truth.
Yeah. Can I thank him for his questions? I hope he will understand in the first instance the principle, I know he does, of police operational independence, and we need to make sure we are reflecting that in a correct way when decisions such as this are taken. I think stepping back, there are wider lessons that we need to learn, which is why the Home Secretary has written to the Inspector to ask him to look at how the SAG process occurs and how it makes decisions. Members will know it was set up basically following the Hillsborough tragedy as a sort of means by which we can make decisions and secure safety in football and indeed in other large-scale events. But the Home Secretary has asked the Inspector to consider the degree to which the police take account intelligence, the degree to which the SAG process takes into account wider community impacts, and that speaks to the question that I can't answer to him now of who was giving information and what basis was the police making their decision on or making their recommendation on. And the review will look at whether the balance of these factors is being struck correctly. So I hope we will come back through that process, which we've asked the inspector to come back to us with initial conclusions by March next year. We've made the funding available for him to do this additional inspection, and we wrote to him just at the end of October to ask him to do this work. On the specific details of the chronology of events, he's absolutely right that Home Office officials asked the United Kingdom Football Policing Unit for an update on the match on the 2nd of October, and they were told that there was Force Gold was considering and it would go to the, and they laid out several different options at that time that were available in terms of the decision that was being made. I've written to the West Midlands Chief to ask for some clarity following, of course, yesterday's newspaper article. I can't tell the honourable member, I'm sure he'll appreciate why the truth of those claims. It's a newspaper article, we want to get to the bottom of it, but of course there are questions within that we need to understand, and I've written to the police chief to happy to share more information as I get it, and already have in terms of their liaison with West Mids already taking a lead on asking some of these questions.
Mr. Speaker, as a local MP, I've expressed my concerns previously about this decision-making process. I welcome the Minister's commitment today that a review is being carried out about how these risk assessments are made. Now, I understand why some information may not be suitable for placing in the public domain, but can she give the House an assurance that the Government's view is that as much information as possible should be made available for public scrutiny?
And can I thank my honourable friend for that question? And of course, we want to make sure as much information as possible is in the public domain. And there were statements in the article yesterday that we do not yet know the truth of, and we need to get to the bottom of that. And I know that this House will be very interested in where the inspector gets to in terms of their look at this, as well as ensuring we have answers to the questions that members are raising today.
Shadow Home Secretary Crystal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month, Maccabi Tel Aviv fans were banned under the threat of anti-Semitic mob violence and a highly politicised anti-Israel campaign. Let me be clear, we must never allow the threat of mob violence to dictate policy. The West Midlands Police cited concerns about the Tel Aviv fans based on a previous game in Amsterdam. But the Dutch police have now shown that is completely false. There was no mob of 500 fans targeting the Muslim community in Amsterdam. In fact, many Maccabi fans were themselves attacked. Nobody was thrown in a river apart from one Maccabi fan. The Maccabi fans were not skilled and just made up. So, what will the government do for providing this false information? And unless they have a good explanation, the Chief Constable should resign. Disturbingly, 2 members of the Safety Advisory Group, Hussein, both previously expressed vehement anti-Israel views, so they were not impartial. And we have seen the Palestine Solidarity Campaign in Birmingham trying to hunt down Maccabi players before the game. That is despicable. When he went to the game, he was abused and called a dog by pro-Palestine protesters, thereby revealing their true colours. And now we have discovered, through a written answer to my honourable friend, the member for Droitwich and Evesham, that the Home Office was made aware of the possibility of the ban as early as October the 2nd, a full 2 weeks before the decision was taken. So why did the Home Office then do nothing to ensure the Maccabi fans could be properly protected? Does the government really think it is acceptable that the threat of anti-Semitic mob violence can dictate policy? Because I think that is morally wrong and should never be allowed to happen in this country.
Can I thank the Shadow Home Secretary? I agree with him that we shouldn't allow the threat of mob violence to stop matches going ahead. I agree with him entirely on that front. I think, with respect, I think he is jumping the gun a bit on some of the phrases that he has made, saying it was just made up. We're not clear on that at this point, and I wouldn't want this House to take what was in the newspaper yesterday and jump to conclusions. That's not to say we don't want to get to the bottom of what happened, and I can reassure honourable members of that. Anti-Semitism has absolutely no place in our society, and we are taking a strong lead in tackling it in all its forms. The Prime Minister made his as did the Secretary of State. Of it in previous weeks. We have a duty to find the right balance between operational independence and making sure all of our communities are protected in exactly the way that we need them to be. And we know, and lots of honourable members here will know, of the work of lots of Jewish organisations, in particular the Community Security Trust, who help us in that task. And we will not shy away from that. And indeed, we will not shy away from what we need to do if there are changes to the SAG process, which, as I say, were set up following Hillsborough for a different purpose, and we find ourselves in a different world with a different set of situations, then we will make the changes that we need to make. And as I said, I've written to the Chief in the West Mids to ask some questions of him. We've asked the Inspector to do a review. And I should say the Home Secretary is right. We've already, Shadow Home Secretary is right. We've already mentioned that it's only a matter of time, he says. I think not, but there we are. It's best wishes to my neighbour in Croydon always. But on the 2nd of October, this was the point at which the Home Office asked the officials in the United Kingdom Policing Unit for the update, and we were told that there were a range of different options being considered, and that was certainly true, and I wouldn't shy away from that. Now it's important that we all, if there are lessons to be learnt, make sure we learn them.
Jo White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At high-risk football matches, including several local derbies, away fans have only been given tickets once they're on the coaches, and those buses have been taken in by a police escort, removing any fan clashes. Would the Minister agree that questions should be asked when this method was not used?
Can I thank question? Of course, there were lots of considerations that the SAG committee was looking at in terms of what the options were. Should it be a closed match, for example, with no fans, which sometimes happens? Should it be one that didn't go ahead at all? Should it be one, as she says, where the tickets could indeed have been limited in number? There were many options that were being weighed up. And of course, it's not just the policing advice that a SAG will look at when it makes its recommendation. It will also look at other factors, and that's why we want to get to the heart of how the SAG process is working, what kinds of decisions are being made, and how that operates. I should also just tell the House that although there was concern that there would be problems in terms of coming to the match, in fact, it weren't realised, which was a good thing, but I will certainly make the point that she raises.
Max Wilkinson, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is alarming that the decision made by West Midlands Police was based on intelligence, parts of which the Netherlands National Police Force has stated are not true, according to reports in the national press this weekend. The public should be able to trust the authorities to base decisions on credible, well-sourced and proportionate intelligence. Will the Minister set out where this intelligence came from, if not the Dutch police? And if she can't, is that one of the questions she's asking West Midlands Police? Who was ultimately responsible for sourcing that intelligence? What investigations has the Home Office asked for to ensure that any circulation of misinformation and the use of that misinformation that was ultimately used by police was not prompted by anti-Semitic sentiment? West Midlands Police have continued to defend their decision and to say that the threat was related to a specific subgroup, not the wider fan base. Will the Home Secretary ensure that senior West Midlands police officers come back to Parliament to appear before the Home Affairs Select Committee to defend their decision and to explain why a total ban on all supporters was justified. And finally, anti-Semitic incidents remain at record highs. What steps is the government taking to reassure the Jewish community of their safety and to tackle the root causes of anti-Semitism? This government promised a community cohesion strategy last year following the Southport attacks. Part of that must focus on anti-Jewish racism. So when will the Minister commit to publishing it?
Can I thank him for his questions? I mean, I can't give him the answers that he wants in terms of the intelligence at this point, and in terms of the root of them and the truth of them. We are responding simply to the information that we got yesterday, and we have asked the appropriate questions to get to the bottom of that. He's right to say that, of course, the Home Affairs Select Committee has a strong role, I think, in this space and can be quite helpful in helping us to unpick some of these challenges. He asked about the support and the signals, indeed, that we are sending and that we intend to send as a government to our Jewish communities to seriously, and I can reassure him that, of course, Jewish community leaders with the Community Security Trust, as has the Home Secretary, and we are making available more funding as a response of the Manchester attack in terms of our Jewish synagogues and other buildings, and that is available for them. We've also commissioned a review, an independent review of our public order legislation and our hate crime legislation, and Lord MacDonald of Riverglaven QC, who is a former Director of Public Prosecutions, who will be well known to this House, has been appointed to do that review, and it will examine whether existing legislation, this is in the wider parameters of public order and protest, is effective and proportionate, whether it adequately protects communities from intimidation and hate, and whether it strikes a fair and sustainable balance between the freedom of expression and peaceful protest and the need to prevent disorder and keep our communities safe. He also referred to the wider review that is being undertaken, not in my department, but we are working with them, and that will be published as soon as it's ready.
Johnny Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the chair of the APPG Against Anti-Semitism, I know that with British Jewish communities facing an unprecedented rise in anti-Semitic attacks and hatred of Jews being spread with impunity online, many Jews are fearful that the events in Birmingham are just the first step in a step towards excluding them from British public life, and there can be no doubt that there are many people in this country who'd be only too happy for that to happen. So is the Minister able to take this opportunity to make it clear to Israelis coming to the UK to take part in our cultural, sporting and academic activities that they will be treated just as coming from any other friendly country?
My honourable friend, that assurance, she is absolutely right, and I thank her for the work she's doing as the chair of the all-party group on anti-Semitism. I have been involved with that group and Danny Stone for many years, and they do a fantastic job, and I would recommend to all members of Parliament to do their training session on anti-Semitism. It is incredibly insightful and really worth investing the time, and of course she's absolutely right. If Israelis want to come here, they are very welcome, and of course there should be no question of that whatsoever. And I think hopefully through the reviews that we are undertaking in terms of public order, through the work that we're doing to put money in terms of tackling anti-Semitism and protecting our Jewish friends in synagogues and other places, we'll be sending the right message. But of course there will always be extra work to do, because anti-Semitism is a rising issue and we all need to work to tackle it.
Chair of the Home Affairs Committee, Dame Karen Brown.
Mr. Speaker, could the Minister provide any information about work that was done by the Home Office from the point that the Home Office found out that the away fans may be banned to the decision being taken, or was that work the work that could be done to enable the match to go ahead with the away fans there, or was that work only done after the decision had been taken?
Can I thank her for her question? There was a series of different interactions and communications between the different groups in that period of time, as you would expect. With these we have to balance this operational independence question. It is not for the Home Secretary to be marching in and demanding that the police say a certain thing or act a certain way. We need to get that right. So there was communications, and I'm sure we could help with outlining those between the period of the 2nd of October, when the Home Office first asked the question to the United Kingdom Football Policing Unit, and the 16th of October when the decision was made. Can I also just be clear that the department found out about the decision when it broke on the news? We were not told in advance, so there was no question of that.
Graham Stringer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Our police forces in this country have dealt with violent fans from other countries for a long time. I don't expect my honourable friend to be familiar with the bad blue boys of Dynamo Zagreb, who are probably the worst fans in Europe, responsible for deaths and imprisonments, or the ultras of Roma, Inter Milan or Lazio. But they've been dealt with. So the only conclusion that I can draw from the information before us, that the West Midlands Police and the local authorities in Birmingham, following fictions about the fans of Maccabi Tel Aviv, created a no-go zone for Jews in one of our major cities, and isn't she, like me, ashamed of that?
My honourable friend, and I thank him for the work that he did supporting colleagues after the Manchester and his constituents, indeed, after the Manchester attack. He's right to point to the 1980s, where we had a completely different era of football, and we are very glad that that has, in the main, he says that there should be no no-go areas for Jews. Of course, that is absolutely right, and I completely agree with him.
Sir Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister knows the Birmingham and Sutton Coldfield area well, and so she will particularly understand why so many of us locally are deeply troubled by this unpleasant episode. The initial decision to ban the Israeli fans was clearly wrong, and that is now compounded by the information that has come to light, and I congratulate my honourable friend on securing this urgent question today. Madam Deputy Speaker, Birmingham is a welcoming and tolerant city, and community relations in Britain's second city are truly excellent. That is not because of the politicians, it's because of the work that the faith communities have done over many years.
My right honourable friend is right. I'm very familiar with Sutton Coldfield, and my husband is a Villa season ticket holder, as are my twin boys, and it is some boys at Villa. But anyway, and it's a lovely club, and they are just devastated that there would be any of this controversy. They just want to play football, watch football, support their players, and get on with it. And they found the whole thing, having talked to lots of them, very upsetting actually, and they just want to watch the football. Birmingham is a great city. He's absolutely right, and I should pay tribute to the faith communities in his area, but across, I suspect, a lot of our constituencies where the Face Together groups come together and bring different leaders together to make sure we are all learning from each other and living side by side together in peace.
Paul Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. According to Jonathan Jardine, the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, in his response to the Home Affairs Select Committee, the Home Office was fully briefed in advance on the likely recommendation to ban visiting fans from the match. So can the Minister explain why the government failed to offer additional support for the match to go ahead until after the ban was finalised?
We weren't fully briefed in advance of the decision. We were told when the decision was made. We knew, as we've already set out, that there were options being considered. The way that these processes work in this country is we have a SAG advisory group that comes together and makes recommendations, and the local authority then respond accordingly. We are, in response to what has happened, asking the inspector to look at those safety advisory groups and to tell us whether we need to make some changes.
Keith Batty.
Thank you,
Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Vice Chair of the APPG for Anti-Semitism, I can attest to the fact that many British Jews don't feel safe, especially in Birmingham. And I take her on her word that she takes this very, very seriously. But when I stood up and spoke about this issue, I received torrents of abuse for doing so, but I did so because I thought it was clear that this decision was wrong. It was bad for the people of the West Midlands, it was bad for Aston Villa fans, it was bad for British Muslims who wrote to me and said that they were concerned that they got dragged into it, and of course terrible for British Jews. The evidence, she can't comment on the evidence being made. The weekend have further upset. West Midlands Police are held to account for this.
Can I thank him for his comments? And he's right that there are Jews in this country who don't feel safe. We have a small community in Croydon we have a synagogue very close to my house, and I certainly have spoken to them many times about how they feel, and it is true that people don't want to go into central London at the weekend, and that should be completely unacceptable to all of us, and that is why we're reviewing the public order legislation, looking at the way that we balance the right, of course, for people to express their views and to protest in a way that is appropriate, but also with the reality of the impact that has had over quite a long period of time now. I am aware of the things that he raised in terms of the information. My point is we need I've written to the West Midlands Police to ask them a series of questions, and I don't want to comment until I have those responses, and I know that the Home Affairs Select Committee have written as well.
Wendy Morton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a West Midlands MP, I find this deeply troubling. And there are clearly questions that do need to be answered. But specifically in light of the significant inaccuracies that have now been confirmed by Dutch law enforcement, does she agree with me that there are also questions that should be asked of the political leadership in the West Midlands, in particular Police and Crime Commissioner, who, however we look at it, Madam Deputy Speaker, is supposed to be representing our communities?
Yes, quite right.
I'm not going to make the slightly political point here of her decision to attack the Police and Crime Commissioner. I think he does a good job, and he has served well for many years. I think the wider question, the wider point she makes about her concern as a West Midlands MP about what this means and what has happened, I absolutely share.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does the Minister agree that the information that has come to light over the weekend seems to suggest that a very worrying bias has entered into the decision-making process, and that this has cast a stain on Birmingham's reputation as a welcoming city, as well as raising serious questions about the senior leadership of West Midlands Police?
I'm not going to draw that conclusion today, and I am going to make sure we get to the bottom of the reporting yesterday and what happened, and he can be assured of that. I think it does speak to a question that we often ask of police, to make decisions that are almost impossible. Setting aside this, we ask police to police protests in a way where we are almost asking them on a day basis, which is very difficult for them, and we do have, and I should pay tribute to a lot of our very excellent public order police officers who are very well trained, work in very difficult circumstances. We ask a lot of them, and I am grateful for the work that they do.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. After the incident with Maccabi Tel Aviv fans in Amsterdam, the government's independent assessor on anti-Semitism, Lord Mann, visited the city, did a fact-finding mission and compiled a report which was then passed to the government. It was passed to the government in January and to the government and police again in June. Can the Minister tell us what consideration, if any, was given to this report in the decision-making?
I would very much like to talk to Lord Mann about the work that he's done, which was prior to me being in post, but I will pick that up.
Thank
you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Let's cut to the chase, Madam Deputy Speaker. Jew hatred in this country has been on the rise for over a decade now. It was given a safe space in the past, and that has grown. I have a significant Jewish population in my constituency who will tell you that going into Leeds sometimes feel a really threatening place with the protest. But the reality is that the protests which take place are okay under freedom of speech, which I support, as long as they don't break the law. These fans were not breaking the law, Madam Deputy Speaker. They should have been allowed to go. But it appears that there are people, for example, as my right honourable friend has outlined on the Safety Advisory Board, who had a biased intent. So may I ask the Minister whether the government can start to really analyse and audit these boards that are supposed to be independent, because we've seen bias at the BBC, we've seen a rise in anti-Semitic language and incidents in the NHS, which despite the Health Secretary saying are unacceptable, the GMC clears. We have 51% of students in Russell Group University which reported they feel it's okay to insult Jews. So can I ask the Minister, please, can there be a root and branch review from the government to make sure that bodies are truly independent and not hiding their blatant anti-Semitism?
Yeah. To his first point, I mean, the Prime Minister and everybody across government made clear, the Prime Minister's view was very clear that this was the wrong decision that was made, and we that's our position. We believe the decision made was the wrong one. On the SAGs, the Safety Advisory Committees, we have asked the Inspector to look at them and look at their role and look at their function. And of course, he's right to point out that across all our public bodies, we need to stamp out anti-Semitism in all its forms, wherever we find it and wherever we see it, and I will certainly support him in that.
Sammy Wilson.
Speaker, confidence in the police, of course, is very important, and the Jewish community have every justification for not being confident in the police, whether it's some of the policing we've seen here in London or in the West Midlands. Given that the reports in the Sunday Times seem to contradict totally what the police in the West Midlands said, is it not accurate to say that their recommendations on which Israeli fans were banned from the Aston Villa match was nothing but a tissue of lies? And if they'd really wanted accurate information, as experienced investigators, would they not have just lifted the phone or sent an email to the police in Amsterdam to find out what the facts were of the match that occurred there? It appears that they have given in to pressure from Muslim politicians and Muslim thugs. And as a result, once again, the Jewish community are left feeling that they're the disadvantaged people. Will the Minister assure us that the inquiry will look very clearly at what political pressure was put on the police in the West Midlands to reach this decision?
The honourable member is right to say that confidence in policing is incredibly important, and we need it to be. We need that confidence across all our communities in the UK, and we know that there is a lot of work to do in some areas in particular. I'm not going to comment on what appears to be the case, but I can reassure him, as I've said, that the Prime Minister believes this was the wrong decision in the first place. We do want to understand what happened, and we do want a wider look at the safety advisory groups, which, as I said, were set up in response to a problem of safety within our football venues. Actually, we recognise that things have moved on. We need to look at whether they're working in the way that they should be.
It sounds like the Minister is getting to grips with this, and I'm very grateful for that. Will she accept that the counterpart or the corollary of operational independence for the police is their political impartiality? And does she agree with me that the last thing we want is a poisonous cocktail of football hooliganism infected by the hatreds arising out of the Middle Eastern conflict?
The honourable gentleman's right to talk about political impartiality. It's absolutely crucial that our police are not making decisions based on politics, but we ask them every day to almost do that, even though we're very clear they mustn't, and it is difficult and it is complicated. And when they are policing, for example, in London or our big cities, protests that have multiple causes and are in response to events around the world that are deeply interesting to a lot of citizens of this country, we do ask a lot of them, and I think we do need to appreciate that in the vast majority of cases they make the right call, they do things
behind closed doors that we don't see. There's lots of negotiation, for example, with lots of protest organisations over changing the route and making sure it's operating and moving in the right way to avoid more conflict. And they do, in the main, a very good job. But we need to make sure we get to the bottom of this case.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, this whole sorry episode will have had a very corrosive effect on the confidence and trust that the Jewish community place in policing. So can the Minister tell us what the government is going to do to ensure that in the long term that confidence is restored? And whether we're talking about this instance at Villa Park or whether it's disorder following pro-Palestinian marches, can the Minister tell me in the House why she thinks it is that for far too often the Jewish community are the ones made to feel that they are the problem?
He raises a good question, and of course we need to work with the Jewish community to make sure the relationships are strong with policing. I would say that I think the Community Security Trust have a really good relationship with policing. They work very, very closely. They obviously have a huge infrastructure, for which we're very grateful, which helps them to monitor the synagogues and other spaces. And I've been, as probably many members have, to their head office and seen the work that they do. Indeed, they have a police officer embedded in their operation centre for some of the time. So those relationships are good. It's the wider Jewish community, of course, need to feel that they can go to the police, they can report crimes, and I would encourage them all to do so wherever they are affected by any kind of hate crime, so that we can make sure the figures are accurate. But of course, I'll keep working to make sure we get this right.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now, the whole House recognises the challenge posed by football hooliganism, but anyone with the slightest knowledge of football would accept that this is restricted to a very small minority of fans of clubs and countries across the world. So can I ask the Minister to work with colleagues in the Home Office and with police forces across the country to ensure that next time an Israeli club draws a British club in European competition, or the Israeli national side draws one of the home nations in a qualifying competition, or indeed if Israel were to qualify for Euro 2028, that those fans would be welcome in the United Kingdom to enjoy our football and our hospitality?
Of course, we want to ensure all fans from all parts of the world are welcome in this country, and he's absolutely right to say that the problem of football hooliganism is nothing like what it was in the 1980s. There was a football match where fans were banned to Villa in 2023, but that was in response to activity I think that was happening in the immediate vicinity of the match, and the decision was made then. But he's right to say this is not a large problem, thank goodness, anymore, in part because of great policing and in part because of the way we've changed how football matches work, and they're much more family affairs than they used to be, less alcohol, all of these things that have helped us with these issues. But he's right, of course, we want to welcome Israeli fans whenever they come.
Final question, Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for her answers and for her confidence that she's trying to instil across the nation. Madam Deputy Speaker, following the news in relation to the so-called confidential intelligence West Midlands Police claimed to have seen that Israeli fans were engaging in quite significant levels of hooliganism, I again am very concerned, as others have expressed as well, that the message this sends in relation to exclusion and how government deal with intelligence in this country. What steps have been taken for the future to ensure that international football fans are treated fairly and not excluded from events based on incorrect information and dishonest claims, and that lessons can be learnt? Thank you very much.
Minister.
Well, the is correct where we can, and we want to make sure decisions are made on a wide range of factors, and that football, a sport that this country loves so much, can carry on in the way that we all want it to.
That is the end of the urgent question. I'll give the front benches a few moments to shuffle over. We now move on to the statement, Critical Mineral Strategy. Minister Chris MacDonald. Critical Mineral Strategy.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. With your permission, I'd like to make a statement on the Government's
critical mineral strategy, and I'm particularly delighted this evening, Madam Deputy Speaker, that you are in the chair, given your personal interest in critical minerals and having launched the UK's first critical mineral strategy a number of years ago. And I'm also pleased to be joined on the front bench by my honourable friend, the member for Croydon, for whose work I aim to take the credit this evening. So first of all, Madam Deputy Speaker, the story of man is the story of metals. From the discovery of the first alloy, bronze, a mixture of copper and tin, people have smelted, melted, forged and formed metals to their will. Knowledge of the art of blending alloys has been sought throughout history by kings and nations for defence and prosperity. The ancients recognised the noble metals of gold and silver, and from them the base metals of tin, lead, copper and iron. The Industrial Revolution led to the industrial metals of steel, aluminium and titanium, but our age is to be dominated by critical minerals, the basic materials that give function to everything, from digital technology to fusion energy. This is why we've launched our new Vision 2035, the UK Critical Minerals Strategy, as part of our industrial strategy and supporting the government's #1 mission for growth. Whether neodymium for permanent magnets, platinum for fuel cells, critical mineral strategy will ensure that the UK can access these vital and security and economic opportunities they offer. The UK is already home to one of the largest nickel refineries in Europe at Clydeback, a rare example of European cobalt refining at Widnes. We have titanium production in Swansea, aluminium at Fort William, chromium in Rotherham, platinum group metals and vanadium, all with the highest standards of environmental control. In Cornwall, we have Europe's largest deposit of lithium, and in Devon, the world's large deposits of tungsten. The UK has the only Western source of rare earth alloys for F-35 fighter jets. To quote my right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, where things are made matters. We have world-leading academic institutions. The University of Birmingham is commercialising a process to pulverise magnets in manufacturing. Queen's University Belfast are developing ionic liquids to recover rare earth metals. Camborne School of Mines has run a research institution for over a century, and I'm looking forward to visiting there tomorrow. Having spent much of my career in metals research, I know that as a country we underestimate the global standing. Our point of research is to create value for the UK economy, which means commercialisation at home. In Britain, we understand the advantage that can be created by a global dominance in metals. For centuries, half the world's tin came from Cornwall and Devon. Britain dominated the graphite industry thanks to the Borrowdale deposits in Cumbria. Almost all of the world's copper was smelted in Swansea, and the majority of global steel production came from Sheffield. As a nation, we confidently built a global competitive advantage from ingenuity alone, taking action to shape the world around us. And now we have the opportunity to confidently do so again. By combining our natural mineral deposits, secondary resourcing from recycling, strength in midstream processing, innovation, and a role as the global centre for finance and trading, we will ensure that by 2035, at least 10% of annual UK demand is met from domestic production and 20% from recycling. This displacement of imports by the development of both primary and secondary recycling routes is driven by a need to enhance our economic security. The deployment of this strategy will ensure that these capabilities are marshalled and supported appropriately, supply chain opportunities identified, and that resources, both public and private, are targeted towards strengthening the UK's competitive position. Our industrial strategy is a deliberate partnership between government and private investment, and this is the case too in critical minerals, with up to £50 million of new government funding for domestic production, taking total funding to over £200 million. The City of London is already a global centre for the listing of mining companies and mining finance, with the London Metals Exchange the global hub for metals trading and ICE Futures Europe expanding into critical minerals. Our opportunity is to redirect our financial investment strength into UK industrial development. Significant investment support is also available from UK Export Finance and the National Wealth Fund for UK entrepreneurs to sell their companies to and increasing the opportunity for Britain to benefit from the growth of new UK-owned, UK-headquartered, UK-listed industrial. scheme, the consultation for which has also been announced with a written statement I have laid before the House today, will improve the competitiveness of the business environment, reducing electricity costs by up to £40 per megawatt hour from April 2027 for over 7,000 eligible manufacturing businesses, reducing their energy bills by 25%. Having identified our needs and domestic capabilities in critical minerals and acting now to secure investment, we must also take action to ensure that our policies on trade and international cooperation ensure diversity of supply and safeguard our nascent industries. As well as exploring our natural primary and secondary sources of critical minerals, we will take action to diversify international supply chains, such that by 2035, no more than 60% of any critical mineral will come from a single country. We will achieve this by ensuring that future trade agreements allow increased access to critical mineral supply chains and enter into bilateral agreements that increase the breadth of our supply base. We will work through organisations such as the G20, G7, the WTO, NATO and the IEA to improve supply chain resilience. In June, my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, announced the largest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. And for the sake of national security, we are considering mandating stockpiles to be held by industry, using procurement to create diversity in the supply chain and work as part of the NATO Critical Minerals Stockpiling Project. Our trade strategy also includes a strengthened approach to trade defence, ensuring that we can safeguard UK businesses from an increasingly volatile international trading environment. This includes introducing new legislation to expand our powers to raise tariffs in response to unfair trading practices. This government is not agnostic about the fate of British industry and British manufacturing. Given a fair business environment, our industry, our workers, can outcompete others. It is our belief that the industrial capability of Britain should not be at the whim of the international market or foreign governments. Our industrial strategy and the place of critical minerals within it is a marked departure from the hands-off approach of the past, with the UK government now working in close partnership with UK industry to support private sector investment and growth, just as other developed economies have done and continue to do. This new critical minerals strategy is another step forward in that ambition, giving businesses, investors, the confidence to ensure that the materials, the industry, the jobs for Britain's future are secured. In summary, Madam Deputy Speaker, critical minerals are essential for building the modern world. Control and supply of these materials are the means by which nations will secure power and wealth in this century. I commend this statement to the House.
Well, I'll definitely be paying close attention. I call the Shadow Minister, Dame Harriet Bolton.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for advance sight of his statement. Critical minerals are indeed vital to our national security. In submarines, in missiles, jet fighters and radars, we need critical minerals for our national defence. Critical minerals in electric vehicles and wind turbines are also vital in our clean energy generation. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's striking that the government's critical minerals strategy doesn't mention China once. Despite the fact that China, which has built almost a global monopoly on processing, recently imposed export licence requirements on 7 rare earth elements: samarium, gadolinium, terbium, dysprosium, lutetium, scandium and yttrium. Could the Minister say whether his department has made any assessment on China's dominance in the critical minerals market and whether the government considers them a threat? This UK critical minerals strategy document also seems to have been written in a bit of a rush. It's sloppy, it's riddled with spelling mistakes, it has inconsistent statistics and errors in geography. Why should industry trust a government that cannot even proofread? For instance, according to the cobalt, 100,000 tonnes and is set to grow by 14%. The global demand for cobalt is forecast to be 438,000 tonnes, but in the government's document, UK domestic demand is 636,000 tonnes in 2030. So could the Minister kindly proofread the document and place a corrected version of the whole strategy in the library? The strategy recognises the prices have had on the critical minerals industry, but under Labour, Madam Deputy Speaker, our Why doesn't the government just adopt our cheap power plan to cut electricity bills by 20%? And oil and gas are key inputs in the production of critical minerals. What impact does the Minister believe this government's policy of closing down the North Sea will have on domestic critical mineral production? Under Labour, Madam Deputy Speaker, foreign direct investment into this country has fallen to an all-time low. How does the government expect to build a critical minerals industry if no one is investing? So can the Minister today rule out any tax rises heading towards this industry on Wednesday? The National Insurance Jobs Tax and the Unemployment Bill are set to cost the critical minerals industry £50 million, exactly the same figure as the funding the government has pledged today. The Chancellor's job tax and the 330-page job-killing employment rights bill are costing businesses £1,000 per worker, and there's a total of 50,000 people employed in this critical minerals industry. So is this a recognition from the Minister that the government's tax rises are crippling British industry? In summary, Madam Deputy Speaker, the first duty of any government is to keep our country safe. Refreshing the critical minerals strategy is an essential part of that mission, but does the Minister agree that given the scale of global competition and the risks of supply chain disruption, there's still a great deal of work to do to ensure Britain is secure in the critical minerals we need for our future?
Minister MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I start by saying that if there are indeed any errors, spelling errors or factual errors in the document, then I offer my apologies to the House. That is clearly unacceptable, and I will ensure that any corrections are made and a new copy is laid before the House, and can I thank her for bringing those matters to my attention. In terms of the substantive issues that were raised, I think the point about China is clearly very important, and the government is very well aware of the dominance of China of the supply chains of critical minerals. In some areas, particularly in processing, as the shadow spokesperson will be aware, China controls 70 to 90% of the market. And our critical minerals strategy is designed precisely to provide greater diversity of supply at home through primary and secondary extraction, where we have the materials to do that, and also through our G7, G20, NATO and other partners, as I mentioned in the statement. And I think a critical point to notice is that the supply of secondary raw materials is a natural resource that the UK has, and currently we offer those resources for processing overseas and return to the UK at considerable cost, and a focus of this strategy is ensuring that we have those in the UK. She mentions electricity bills. I think that my statement is best read in conjunction with the written statement I mentioned on the British Industrial Competitiveness Scheme, which aims to reduce electricity bills for 25% as compared with their current production. And the British Industrial Competitiveness Scheme and the critical minerals are all part of this government's relentless focus on growth and our success in attracting inward investment. As to the points about taxation, I'm afraid you'll have to wait 48 hours for the budget for that.
Paramoon.
Whereas, Madam Deputy Speaker, anyone that has visited my Camborne, Redruth and Hale constituency cannot miss the signs of our industrial past. But after decades of post-industrial deprivation, global demand for critical minerals is surging to accelerate the transition to a clean energy future entirely opposed by reform. With our unique geology, Cornwall is at the epicentre of the opportunity. The geology hasn't changed, but the market is back with a government that gets it. And this Labour government has published a strategy with teeth to targets for domestic production, a new growth minerals list and £50 million funding. Does the Minister agree with me that investment must flow into Cornwall to create jobs and reduce the reliance on China that was allowed to run rampant under the Conservatives, and in so doing unleash the Cornish Celtic tiger?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and morass to my honourable friend. He has been such a strong champion of critical minerals that it's a pleasure to hear from him today. And it is no wonder, given that Camborne and Redruth is the home already to the Crofty Tin Mine and has great opportunity for lithium extraction as well, holding, as it does, Europe's largest deposits of lithium. And I do believe this will be the launch of a renaissance in the mining industry in Cornwall, an industry that has so much to bring to Cornwall, and that I know that the Cornish people love so well, for the jobs that it brings and for the pride that it gives to communities too. It simply wouldn't have been possible to do all of the work in this strategy without the support of my honourable friend and his fellow MPs from Cornwall, and I look forward to finding out more about the opportunities in Cornwall myself when I visit there tomorrow.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Sarah Olney.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I also thank the Minister for advance sight of the statement. The critical minerals are vital to national security, economic development, the green transition and regional prosperity. Liberal Democrats believe the UK must strengthen and regularly update its industrial strategy. The 2022 Centre are useful foundations. We're proud of the strategy that we introduced in regional inequality and sustainable economic development. Strategy announced today, increasing domestic production to boost our national resilience to supply chain changes. And we support the commitment that at least 10% of annual UK demand will be met from domestic production by 2035. However, I wish to ask the Minister, what further steps is the government taking to reduce reliance on unreliable foreign sources of critical minerals? And furthermore, how will the government ensure that the UK remains competitive with the US and the EU, both of which offer substantial incentives for critical minerals processing? We also welcome the launch of the consultation today on the British Industrial Competitiveness Scheme, but the energy-intensive industries are set to benefit from a 90% discount on their electricity network charges. But I wish to ask what will be available to small businesses, including many in the hospitality and continue to struggle with energy bills. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Mr MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I thank her for her words on the strategy? But you know, words are one thing and implementation is another. And the thing that this government is very much focused on now is how we implement the strategy and how we ensure that we attract the investment. And the single big difference I think that this government does is we're putting real money behind the strategy. As I mentioned, an additional £50 million, bringing the total level of funding to £200 million, but also through both the British Business Bank and the National Wealth Fund, the opportunity for more significant investment, as I said, to ensure that we have UK-headquartered, UK-owned, UK-listed industrial champions in this area. We're not agnostic about industry and manufacturing, and we want to ensure that the communities that host these businesses benefit from that, and that the UK economy benefits as a whole.
Jane Kirkham.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and I am so pleased that finally the riches beneath our feet in Cornwall will be taken out and used in a sustainable way that benefits the people of Cornwall. I am so pleased, and the people of Cornwall are so pleased to see this strategy. The Minister is coming to Cornwall also to visit my port in Falmouth, which I hope will benefit from an expansion project, and also to restore the freight railway, which could be used in the future to move some of these critical minerals and supplies around in a more sustainable way and take lorries off the road. Would the Minister consider this when he comes to Cornwall tomorrow as part of the strategy going forward?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I would like to thank my honourable friend for the significant amount of work and engagement that she's had with me during the preparation of this strategy. She's right to highlight the opportunity around the port of Falmouth, and perhaps also include opportunities in renewable Falmouth tomorrow, and I will be very pleased to hear more about those opportunities when I'm there in person.
Dr Andrew Morrison.
Madam Deputy Speaker, this country has no phosphates, no agriculture. Happily, our close friend and ally, the Kingdom of Morocco, has most of the world's reserves of phosphate, but it's closely followed by unreliable countries, Russia, China, Syria, Algeria. So does his 60% rule apply to phosphates, and will he ensure that the UK and Morocco in 2019 is strengthened further so that we have access to phosphates, without which our farming sector is completely finished?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank him for raising the issue of phosphates. He's quite right. This is an incredibly important element for agriculture. In terms of our securing supplies, I would point him to the part of the strategy that talks about bilateral arrangements with nations to ensure that we get that diversity of supply. So we're committed to working through multilateral organisations, but also ensuring that we get bilateral agreements in place with countries where there is mineral wealth that will be of benefit to the UK and where there can be a mutually supporting relationship.
Anna Gilded.
Cornwall has a proud history of mining, and this announcement means that we will also lead the way in meeting the UK's future demand for critical minerals. So I warmly welcome the Minister's statement. This government's plan will create opportunities for jobs and businesses in South East Cornwall, such as Cornish Resources, and my constituents thank you for that. Yeah. Including year-round skilled jobs, strong local supply chains and investment that keeps local talent in Cornwall. So can the Minister outline more about how the government will ensure that this investment is supported by a clear skills plan so local people can access the new jobs linked to the critical industry, and how communities will be involved throughout this exciting months ahead?
Yeah. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank my honourable friend for raising this issue of skills and also for her continuing championing of this industry in Cornwall and of details with me over some time. Clearly, the Cornwall that already exist is one of the reasons why these industries will be so successful in Cornwall. But the government also recognises that there requires more investment in skills to ensure that so many viable projects in Cornwall can be successful. And I can assure her that the Department for Business and Trade are working with the Department for Work and Pensions on this issue, and we are determined to ensure that all of the people of Cornwall have the opportunity to participate in these industries.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Minister, tell the House what's so special about the year 2035. This is the year by which the government says it's going to achieve the expenditure of 3.5% of GDP on defence, compared with the 4.5% to 5% we used to spend in the Cold War years of the 1980s. And it's now the year that the government says no more than 60% of any critical mineral will come from a single country. Doesn't the government feel that the international deterioration of relationships is such that we ought to be thinking in a rather closer timescale than 10 years from now?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. So I don't know about the honourable gentleman, but when I'm setting objectives, I like them to be specific, measurable and achievable. And so the date of 2035 is, of course, a target that we've worked on very carefully with the industry, and considering projects such as those I mentioned in Cornwall, clearly there are mobilisation periods for them as well. It may be that he is right to point out that there is a synergy there between the date of 2035, our critical mineral strategy, and our defence strategy, given that these two strategies are so closely linked.
Noah Law.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And as Chairman of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Critical Minerals, I greatly welcome the strategy released this weekend. Domestic supplies of critical minerals are of huge importance to our economic security and resilience in an ever more turbulent world. But they're also a potential source of jobs and prosperity, particularly in places like Mid-Cornwall, which, like in his own home, were once rich with the spoils of industry, but can be once again too. So I really welcome, can I welcome the Minister to meet with Cornish industry, Cornish workers and our supply chain businesses to agree how we ensure that the spoils of this industry cascade through every level of the local workforce, supply chains and even local ownership.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank my honourable friend for his work on the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Critical Minerals and working with the Critical Minerals Association, and their work in advance of this strategy was incredibly helpful. And of course, he speaks well championing his area in Cornwall, where there is both projects from Cornish Lithium and British Lithium. I can assure him I will meet both of those companies and speak both to the management and the workforce when I'm in Cornwall tomorrow.
Martin Wrigley.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I welcome the ambition of this new strategy and the importance of it as well. And may I congratulate the Minister on recognising that Devon is the source of more than just cream teas and tourism. The Devon Minerals Plan, however, has more than these critical minerals in it. In my constituency, we have a current application to extend the ball clay mine, which is digging up xythyrix and ball clay, a substance only found in the middle of the town of King Stainton and in the war zone in Ukraine. Can I ask the Minister's assurance that whilst we have an absolutely justified urge to get these minerals out, that we will not abandon the environmental and residential concerns of our constituents in the areas that are being impacted? And transport is important. The Devon needs the Dawlish rail line to support these minerals.
Please keep questions short. They're not speeches. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank him for his comments and particularly pointing out the importance of Durham. Sorry, for Devon. Durham's slightly on my mind. It's my home county. I think we may come to Durham later in this session. Yes, on this issue of the minerals in Devon and his prime point about the environmental aspects of this, I did mention in my statement that the UK projects will be held to the highest environmental standards. And I specifically wrote those words into the speech because I think we need to take into account when we're assessing sources of critical minerals that in many places in the world great environmental harm is caused both by the extraction and processing of critical minerals. And on this processing area in particular, it is an economic opportunity for the UK, but also an environmental responsibility that I think we need to face up to, that it is incumbent on us to find a way to produce these, do this processing economically in the UK so that environmental harms are not caused anywhere else in the world.
Justin Madders.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome this report and statement from the Minister today, and also refer him to the Select Committee's report issued today on economic security, which touches on some of the issues that he has talked about, but talks about also the much wider threats that we have to the UK in terms of our resilience as an economy. And on that point, I wanted to just ask him about stockpiling. Now, the statement today refers to some stockpiling potentially taking place in the defence industry, but having seen what the Select Committee have identified as the many threats to our national security, would he consider expanding the scope of stockpiling to other critical minerals? Because I think there is a real potential for industries just to be completely crippled if other hostile actors wanted to take that route.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank him for his question and also thank him for the work that he did as part of the ministerial team in the Department for Business and Trade prior to my appointment. On this issue of stockpiling, it's government's view that we'll work with the Ministry of Defence and Industry, and whilst not mandating stockpiling, use procurement appropriately. And certainly I think that the precise of the minerals to be stockpiled is something the Ministry of Defence will want to look at much more carefully. I know as well he's been a great champion for less common metals, a great British champion in this space in his constituency. I can assure him I spoke to the Chief Executive of that business transforming the strategy.
Andrew George.
Madam Speaker and Resta. And may I first of all congratulate my honourable friends on the Minister's side of the House and endorse everything that they have said on this issue. As the Minister will be aware, Cornwall has its own industrial strategy which harmonises with the Government's ambition. It includes the space sector, green energy and others. And my question is, the Government backs the Cornish industrial strategy so that we can crack on with delivering the critical mineral strategy and indeed all other aspects of the Cornish industrial strategy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. He makes a good point in that ultimately the delivery of any industrial strategy or any modern industrial strategy is fully dependent on critical minerals. The sectors he mentioned, such as space, are all entirely dependent on critical minerals. And I doubt there has ever been a strategy presented in this House which has more fulsome backing of Cornwall than this one.
Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Defence Select Committee has been conducting a review of the AUKUS submarine programme and has recently published its review on European defence security. Secure critical minerals are central to both. Can the Minister explain how this strategy supports our national security strategy and the delivery of major defence programmes such as GCAP, LMM, new Typhoon radar and the new frigates?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable and gallant friend is quite right to raise this issue of AUKUS. I omitted AUKUS from my long list of international in my speech, but of course there is an important role for all between the nations involved there. So our procurement reforms with the MOD will involve a supply chain centre where we will work with such international partners. And he's also right to point out the economic opportunity as well through the exports orders that the UK has recently secured. And having a supply chain of critical minerals in the UK will help for the security of those exports.
Harry Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I didn't realise you were calling me. Anyone listening to this statement today should be very fearful for the future of energy production in this country. On one hand, we have a government totally committed to net zero, the elements of which will require huge inputs. On the other hand, the Minister is telling us that by 2035 we can't expect to supply more than 10% by ourselves. We will still be reliant on some other countries for 60%, and we have no control over the global distribution of these metals or the political control of them. Does he not accept that this is not a strategy of assurance for the future, but a strategy which could leave us increasingly vulnerable to people who have control over materials which we need for energy production, and we shouldn't be turning our back on the gas and oil which we have in our own oil?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And thank the honourable gentleman for giving me the opportunity just to clarify one point. He has formed the impression from my words, and I apologise if I wasn't clear about it, that we would only supply 10% from UK production. It's actually 10% from primary sources, that is from mineral extraction, and a further 20% from recycling, so 30% in total from UK production. He talked about the green energy industries. These critical minerals, of course, are essential for many other industries as well, for defence, for space, for artificial intelligence. In fact, I know how very concerned he is about industries such as oil and gas. They're essential for those industries too.
I ask colleagues to keep their questions short. Bill Eston.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Energy Select Committee has heard evidence that we need these critical minerals for our energy future. Absolutely true. So the 10% from production, the 20% from recycling are key steps along that road. But can I ask about the 60% from, no more than 60% from one country? He talked about some of the allies he'll work with. But what will this government do to ensure that production is increased from countries other than those such as China?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. So yes, he raises the point about where the remaining 70% of the UK, from where the remaining 70% of the UK critical minerals are sourced. And of course, for some of these critical minerals, the UK will be able to produce more than our own domestic needs. And that enables us to enter into trading arrangements. I've already met with my opposite number in the Canadian government, and Canada, of course, has extremely rich resources in this area, and the US is also very active. And I mentioned some of the multinational organisations we're working through, not least through NATO. So it is through those arrangements and through trading arrangements with such nations that will ensure diversity of resources where we don't have those resources ourselves in the UK.
Richard Ford.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister mentioned that Devon is home to the world's largest deposit of tungsten. Tungsten is used in medical devices, robotics and in defence applications. Yet 80% of global demand for tungsten is currently being met by China. Will any of the £250 million that the government has announced in its defence growth deal go towards tungsten mining in Devon?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. So we're determined to ensure that we exploit all of the natural resources that I mentioned that are available in the UK. And I think his point about the strong grip that China has on processing of minerals speaks to my earlier point really about to get the raw materials either from secondary sources or primary sources, as he mentioned, but we need to ensure that we attract the investment in the UK for processing too, and there is certainly an opportunity in Devon for that processing to be co-located alongside the natural resources if that were considered to be a beneficial economic opportunity.
Deputy Speaker, I welcome my honourable friend's statement, but he will be aware that there is widespread concern about the impact of deep-sea mining of critical minerals, which devastates an ecosystem that we know very little about. So to take it, he may not have the answer now, but will he undertake to write to me to say what the government can do to ensure as we go forwards that we don't encourage deep sea mining by allowing it into our future strategy as we go forward?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I can assure the honourable gentleman that the government is extremely concerned about the ecological impact of deep sea mining. The government supports a moratorium on the, and I'll choose my words very carefully here, on the exploitation of deep sea mining, whilst allowing for exploration of deep sea mining. I think that the exploration is valuable. Work from the Chief Scientific Advisor in my own department to be fully appraised of the environmental impacts of potential impacts of deep sea mining.
Jim Shannon.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Minister very much for his positive statement. It is great that government's critical minerals strategy aims to reduce our over-reliance on foreign suppliers and to support in building a more resilient domestic supply chain, which is central to our growth sectors and clean energy. The Minister referred to Queen's University and their critical and important role in magnetic recycling technology. So what steps have been taken which could unlock further incentives mineral strategy?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The honourable gentleman is very right to point out that this critical mineral strategy is something that will benefit every nation within the UK, including Northern Ireland. I'm particularly keen to learn more about ionic technologies, liquid salts, ionic waters, separation methods, which have been a flagship project for Queen's University Belfast. Relevant ministers in the devolved strategy, and I'm keen to continue to work with them on it.
Luke Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the critical minerals strategy from the government, although I do wish that that great British export of polyhalite had been included and given the recognition it deserves as a critical mineral. And that being said, Teesside is a region with great critical minerals strength, and so I wonder if the Minister can set out how this strategy will benefit our region and the wider supply chain as well.
Sir.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. He's very right to highlight the polyhalite mines. The Whitby mine, of course, and I've been down the Bulby mine myself some years ago. They're really quite remarkable and a great natural mineral strength for the UK. In Teesside particularly, there are two projects, Tees Valley Lithium and Green Lithium, both of which are looking at sites in the Teesside area and we hope will be operational soon, and certainly positioning Teesside to continue its strength in processing as a processing centre for critical minerals in the UK.
Luke Akehurst.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does the Minister agree that in an increasingly uncertain world, ramping up our domestic critical mineral production and diversifying our supply is critical to the defence of our country?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I couldn't agree more with my honourable friend's words. There is an intrinsic link between the availability of critical minerals and the surety of defence, which is why so many countries are concerned about this. And it is also why I am determined to ensure that we have British businesses that are invested in and grow in the UK to ensure that we can have the supply of critical minerals that we need.
Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome this strategy for all that it will do to tackle the stranglehold that China has on critical minerals. It sits alongside this government's efforts to build homegrown clean energy to get off the Russian-dominated fossil fuel market. And it also sits alongside our work to ramp up domestic production of defence capabilities to keep at bay the Russian menace, which sits in stark contrast with Reform, whose leader in Wales, Nathan Gill, has just been jailed for 10 years for betraying our country and accepting payment for pro-Putin propaganda being pushed out and being bribed. Would the Minister agree with me that when our essentials are made in Britain, all of us in Britain can feel safer?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I do agree with him that the security of the nation is certainly very much dependent on the availability of these critical minerals. And I do hope that when people go to the ballot box, they do think about the security of this nation and whether parties such as Reform can be trusted when they have senior people taking bribes from overseas governments.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Critical minerals underpin everyday life, essential for national security, to the electronic gadgets that we all rely on. Will the Minister state how the critical mineral strategy will ensure UK businesses benefit while securing resilient supply chains?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And clearly the strategy will help UK businesses to benefit, but in the friend for Wolverhampton North East, Recyclers Group is already operating make full use of waterless, low emission processes to recycle lithium-ion batteries. I'm sure we'll see many such technologies to make use of end-of-life batteries from electric vehicles.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome this statement from the Minister, who is of course my constituency neighbour, and he knows full well that we represent areas that built this country and were far too often left behind by the last government, by globalisation and by deindustrialisation. So can he assure me that this strategy and our wider industrial strategy will benefit those areas like Teesside, like Hartlepool, that did so much to build this country?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We already have projects for lithium recycling coming forward in Teesside that will benefit his constituents in Hartlepool, and more than that, investments in nuclear power, the life extension of the existing power station, small modular reactors in his constituency will all require critical minerals. He's right. The people of Hartlepool did build the UK, and more than that, they are now also the entrepreneurs leading some of these new critical minerals companies.
Graham Stringer.
Madam Speaker, I respect my honourable friend's optimism and his detailed technical knowledge of this issue. I suspect it's going to be very tough getting the supply lines as secure as he wants them to be. But does he also recognise that there is an absolute magnitude problem? And I'm sure he's read Ed Conway's book, Material World, where he points out that we need enough copper in the next 22 years, equivalent of what has been mined over the last 5,000 years. Is he aware of that, and is it part of the strategy?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I am delighted my honourable friend has raised the issue of copper. I raised this issue actually nearly 10 years ago. And copper was not included in previous strategies because it wasn't regarded as a critical mineral. I'm pleased to say that the new strategy creates a new category of growth minerals. So these are minerals that don't fit the definition of critical minerals but are important for the future and for which we need to grow. And clearly for me as well, a priority is this recycling and secondary refining aspect. Currently, all of our copper in the UK is extracted and taken overseas for melting and refining. There's a good opportunity for us to do that in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister talks about things that are smelted, melted, forged and formed, and he will know that crucial to those processes are in fact ceramics. He will also know that to deliver the ambitions that he has in terms of growth and recovery and in terms of virgin production, there will need to be an expansion of those processes. Is he having conversations with British Ceramics about how we can get refractory level ceramics in a better position to compete? And on today's announcement about superchargers, industrial competitive scheme, it talks about funding services. He will know that those processes that now he needs to get the strategy that he wants require gas. And is there conversations happening about how the gas prices will underpin this strategy as well?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. He is very correct to point out the essential role of refractories, of ceramic refractories, in the production of any high-temperature processes, including critical minerals. And on both of the issues that he's raised, I'll be very happy to meet with him later this evening to discuss them in further.
Dr. Alison Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Advanced ceramics companies such as Mantec and my Stoke-on-Trent South constituency produce ceramic membrane filters that are capable of extracting critical minerals, including from industrial waste, improving productivity, recycling, reducing environmental pollution and, of course, reducing costs. Can the Minister tell me how UK businesses in the critical minerals supply chain, including innovators like Mantec, can benefit from the strategy through our strong public finance office offers, including the National Wealth Fund and the UK Export Finance?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. So businesses with the kind of technologies that she described, separation technologies, can, as she said, access funding via the British Business Bank and the National Wealth Fund, and also the additional £50 million that we have made available. If it's a very early stage technology, then I'd encourage the business to have discussions with one of the catapult centres or local universities and consider an Innovate UK grant.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was delighted to see the prominence given to County Durham in this strategy, where Weardale, that I represent, has the highest density of lithium currently known in the UK. And will the Minister support me in working with the businesses in Weardale that are trying to extract it, but also not only look at extraction, because we don't only fall behind in the supply of critical minerals, but also in the processing of those minerals, where we have a real opportunity to develop battery manufacturing in County Durham.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend is absolutely right to point to the opportunity in Weardale, which is currently being investigated by Weardale Lithium. I do hope that they will be successful in the extraction of lithium. And of course, as he says, there is an opportunity for processing as well. This strategy identifies two major areas of activity in Cornwall and in the north east of England in County Durham. As he has said, that's not a new arrangement. The village I grew up in had a sinker's row for Cornish tin miners who came to sink mines in County Durham. I'm sure that most people in County Durham have Cornish genes. And in fact, this will be a great opportunity to collaborate on industry between these two great regions of the country.
Final question, Alison Hume.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Bulby Mine is the world's only polyhalite mine. Woodsmith Mine near Whitby is hoping to be the second. Polyhalite is a rare mineral which is used as a super fertiliser. Can the Minister confirm that polyhalite, which contains magnesium, is eligible for support under the new strategy?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend is right to point out the importance of polyhalite and also the uniqueness of the UK reserves. As I mentioned earlier to my honourable friend, the mine at Bulby, which I've visited, and also hopefully soon the new mine from Whitby, Teesside, are both very, very important parts of the UK's mineral and will continue to be exploited for some time to come. Thank you.
That is the end of the critical mineral strategy. Point of order, Caroline Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is now over 1 year since myself, the Father of the House, the Right Honourable Members for Newark, Louth Horncastle, South Holland and the Deepings, and the Honourable Members for Grantham Vaughan, Rutland and Stamford and Boston Skegness wrote to the Chancellor to express our concern to the rise in national insurance affecting Lincolnshire and Nottinghamshire Air Ambulance. Shamefully, despite it being chased repeatedly by my office, by raising it in this House repeatedly and raising it with the members of the Procedure Committee, we still have had no reply. This is a government showing huge disrespect for this House and for people right across Lincolnshire and Nottinghamshire. With the budget on Wednesday, what can we do, Madam Deputy Speaker, to get this sorted out?
Did I hear correctly? 1 whole year?
Over a year.
I am grateful to the honourable member for giving notice of her point of order. Government departments must reply promptly. The delay outlined by the honourable member would in relation to answering this question. I assume that the Treasury front bench will no doubt relay that forthwith. I suggest you also ask the Chair of the Procedure Committee to look into this matter, because nobody should be waiting 1 whole year for correspondence. That is the end of the point of order and the statement. I'll allow the front benches to shuffle over.
Thank you very much.
We move on to the business of the day, English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill. Programme motion. Minister to move.
I beg to move.
The question is the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, programme number 2, motion as on the order paper. As on the order paper, so many of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, as amended in Public Bill Committee, to be considered.
Now.
We will begin with the Government New Clause 43, with which it will be convenient to consider other new clauses, new schedules and amendments. 1. I call the Minister to move New Clause 43.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I am delighted to bring the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill back to the House for report stage. Before I go any further, I'd like to place on record my gratitude to members from across the House for their continued engagement on this bill, and in particular to the chairs and members of the Public Bill Committee for their diligent and thoughtful contribution to line-by-line scrutiny of the bill. Madam Deputy Speaker, this bill will secure the biggest transfer of power out of Whitehall to our regions and communities in a generation. At its heart is the principle to take Westminster and Whitehall and place it in the hands of local leaders and communities who know we can unlock the economic potential of places. We can revive communities that have been held back for too long and deliver for people in the places where they live, raise a family and work. We will provide mayors and their strategic authorities with new powers over planning, housing, transport and regeneration so they can get Britain building and unleash the economic potential of their areas. We will reform and rebuild local government so it can once again deliver good local services that people can rely on, and we will empower local communities to shape their places so they can drive the change that they want to see on their doorstep.
Madam Deputy Speaker. When it comes to the devolution of powers down to our mayors, and the West Midlands is a really good example because we've had a mayor for a number of years, can the Honourable Lady assure me, though, that the devolution of powers will be accompanied by a devolution of accountability and scrutiny to local councillors and, importantly, to local communities, because I fear this is exactly what is missing and continues to be missing in this piece of legislation.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Absolutely. We are very clear that with powers comes responsibility and accountability. We are strengthening scrutiny powers for local government, and we'll continue to look at ways in which we can strengthen scrutiny powers and accountability powers for mayors. But we are absolutely clear that we've got to devolve power, but alongside it is really important that local people can hold to account the institutions that we are creating and that we are building. Since the bill, I'll make some progress and then I will give way. Since the bill left this chamber at second reading, the government has made a modest number of amendments to ensure that the bill will operate as intended. To be clear, we have not introduced significant new policy. Rather, we have responded to concerns raised by members in best tradition of parliamentary scrutiny. I'm confident, therefore, that we are bringing a better bill back for report. Today's debate is concerned with parts 1 and 2 of the bill, on strategic authorities and their powers, duties and functions. Many of our amendments are minor and technical. I will therefore focus on explaining the more substantive changes we made at committee and the further amendments we brought forward at report which relate to these parts of the bill. I will give way.
I'm grateful it is the government's clear intention to devolve powers, but in the reorganisation of local government, the government is taking sweeping powers to determine the outcome of any reorganisation, for example, in Essex. Will the Minister undertake actually to listen to the consultation and to reflect the consultation responses in the decision the government takes? Because at the moment in the bill there is no obligation to do that.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we are very clear that the process of local government reorganisation should be driven by local areas. That is why we're going through a process where local areas at the moment are coming up with proposals. They're consulting constituent authorities, they're consulting their communities, and then we will make a decision based on those proposals. This bill, it is very clear, is about devolution. Yes, there is a backstop power, but that backstop power is not one that we intend to use. It will only be used in extreme cases. The process of local government reorganisation is proceeding at the moment. All areas that are in that process are engaging currently, and what we are seeing is that proposals are coming forward, and we will make decisions based on those proposals, because at the heart of that reorganisation is an objective to make sure that we have local authorities that are more sustainable and local authorities that can deliver for their local people. That's the central purpose of reorganisation, and it is something that we are absolutely committed to delivering on.
Minister for giving way, and I want to just echo the point made by my right honourable friend. The Minister, through Bill Committee, outlined that she wanted this process to be a happy process, but can I ask her to confirm on the floor of the House that if local authorities do not wish to go through local government reorganisation, this government will force them, won't it?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I think it is some cheek for the opposition to be raising this because under their watch, local government was put under a huge amount of pressures. Under their watch, reorganisation that should have happened, they ducked. So we are now gripping this. We are driving the change, and we're not doing it for the fun of it. We are doing it because we are very, very clear that we need to deliver for local people. We need services that make sense, a geography that makes sense, that can fundamentally deliver the outcomes that we want in places. So we are going through a process. All areas are engaging in that process in good faith. We will see their proposals, and my colleague in the department in my department will make a decision based on the criteria that we have explicitly and transparently set out. I will make some progress on the things that we'll be debating today. So at committee stage, we amended Schedule 1 and 9 of the bill to require the combined foundational strategic authorities' decisions on adopting local transport plans and agreeing their budgets will require the unanimous agreement of all constituent councils. This recognises that budget setting and the local transport plan are key strategic decisions which all councils should agree to in the absence of a mayor with a clear democratic mandate. Further amendments to Schedule 1 will also require the consent of relevant constituent councils in matters which could result in financial liability on that council. Moreover, we believe, Madam Deputy Speaker, strategic authorities are uniquely placed to understand the demands for education and training places in their area. We have therefore widened duties on strategic authorities to work with their constituent councils to plan provision locally and ensure that enough education and training is provided in their areas. This will ensure that the needs of those aged 16 to 18 and those over 19 with an education, health and care plan are met. We have also ensured that at least one full academic year has passed between the establishment of the designation of a new strategic authority and its ability to exercise the 6 adult education functions. This is an approach in line with that taken for strategic authorities who already exercise this function. On local growth plans, I will make a little bit more progress and then I will give way. On local growth plans, we have expanded the definition of relevant bodies that can be named in secondary legislation who must have regard to the shared local growth priorities that the government agrees with mayors. This reflects our original intention set out in the white paper. It is essential that mayors know that their agreed priorities will be acted upon and that all parts of government are pulling in the same direction to grow the economy. Let me now turn to the more substantive amendments that the government is making at report stage to these parts of the bill. The bill already provides mayoral strategic authorities with the general power of competence. As currently drafted, Schedule 4 of the bill allows non-mayoral combined authorities and non-mayoral combined county authorities to exercise the general power of competence only for the purpose of economic development and regeneration. Our amendment removes that restriction, ensuring that all combined authorities and combined county authorities can make full use of the general power of competence in the same way that local authorities can.
Thank the Minister. I won't be the only MP, Madam Deputy Speaker, that has received a letter or correspondence from the Country Landowners Association. They're quite clear. They fear that rural regions will be left behind. They're worried about the mayors taking on the unprecedented control over transport, housing, planning, skills and economic development. How can the Minister assure all of us in this House that the challenge that ensuring mayors understand which powers will genuinely support rural businesses? Rural businesses need not be left behind. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you to the Honourable Member for raising the point of rural areas. As we see mayors in more rural areas, it is incumbent on them to respond to the priorities and the needs of their local people. That is the beauty of the democracy that we are putting in place. That is the beauty of the fact that mayors will be democratically elected. And what we are seeing is in areas where we have mayors that cover rural areas, they are absolutely clear about the challenges in the rural economy, and they're working to ensure that their economic plans and their investment plans address that. And that is what I expect, because at the end of this is a democratic lock. And if a mayor does not respond to the challenges in his or her local area, then vote them out. I will give way.
I'm grateful. During the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, the Minister of State for Planning said that government would be using the devolution bill to strengthen the status of assets of community value. Can the Minister confirm that this devolution bill will indeed strengthen that status so that we don't see the demolition of such an asset in pursuit of new housing?
Minister Van Bullen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yes, we will be moving on when we talk about the bill around community right to buy and assets of community value. We are very, very clear that communities should be able to both identify assets of community value, but that they are then protected. And then we are looking to give communities greater power in order to take on those assets. So we are very clear that every community will have those assets that they very much value. And what this bill will do is make sure that we give them the power and the tools in order to protect those assets. I am moving on to another key amendment that we are making at report stage. I am sure that members across the House agree with me that London's pubs, its restaurants are the beating heart of our cultural life. They contribute to our capital's world-class status and to the growth of our economy. Yet for too long, hospitality businesses have been held back by a licensing regime which lacks proportionality, consistency and transparency. This is why we are bringing forward amendments to pilot a new licensing regime in London, which will give hospitality businesses greater confidence and create the conditions for London's nighttime economy to thrive. These amendments will give the a strategic licensing power for hospitality London's nighttime economy, which licensing authorities in Greater London will have a duty to have regard to when carrying out their licensing function. The Mayor of London will also be made a statutory consultee on licensing authority policies, and the GLA will become a responsible authority in the licensing process. These amendments will also introduce a call-in power for the Mayor of London for borough licensing applications of strategic importance. While the policy, I will give way. I thank the Minister for giving way, and I thank her for outlining this new power that the government are looking at. I came from a meeting earlier this morning with my two neighbouring parliamentary colleagues, the member for Dulwich and West Norwood and the member for Brixton and Clapham. One of the issues that we are seeing is where some areas where there are licensing policies which are having a detrimental impact to local communities. Does the Minister agree that the proposals being outlined, there still is a crucial role for local licensing authorities where our hard-working councillors are working with the community to determine what licensing applications are coming forward?
Mr. Fambola.
My honourable friend is absolutely right to highlight this. We are very clear that the local licensing authority will still continue to be the key authority. Things, for example, like licensing fees will flow to those local authorities. What this does is it creates the ability for the Mayor of London to call in particular instances where that are of strategic importance, but licensing authority and the community, because whatever is done, because again the Mayor is elected, must be done with the support of the local community. Turning now to planning, to empower our mayors to unlock housing and infrastructure that provides mayors of strategic authorities with the ability to intervene in planning applications of potential strategic importance and to make mayoral development orders to better support growth in their area. These powers are currently only available to the Mayor of London. When a mayor decides that they will become a local planning authority for an application of potential strategic importance, our amendment will enable them to choose between either a written representation procedure or an oral hearing so that applicants, local planning authorities and other parties can make representation before a final decision is made. Let me be very clear. We want oral hearings to continue to be an important part of mayoral decision-making. Applications of potential strategic importance which a mayor will be dealing with will often be very significant developments which have wider ramifications for the area. So it is absolutely crucial that there is an opportunity to make direct representation to the mayor. However, an oral hearing may not be necessary for certain applications where planning matters may be less substantial. For instance, when an application deals with a variation to an earlier permission where the planning matter has already been established. This, we believe, by creating options and flexibility for the mayor, could save up to several months in some cases by avoiding an unnecessary repeated oral hearing period. I will give way.
I'm really concerned that this will result in a railroading of planning applications that will impact on constituencies such as mine, which are on the periphery of the West Midlands. So I'd like to ask the Minister, in her proposals, what specific safeguards will she be putting in place to make sure that ward councillors, local planning committees continue to have a voice, and so do local members of Parliament? Because quite frankly, Madam Deputy Speaker, at the moment, the Mayor of the West Midlands doesn't even reply to my letters.
Minister.
Well, look, we are very clear that in the instance where a mayoral development order is being put in place, that there will be procedures that the Mayor will have to set out so that people can make direct representation. Mayors will be democratically elected. Therefore, the need to consult with their constituent authorities in order to deliver, but critically, the need to consult with their community who can vote them in or out will be absolutely critical. So we have set this out and designed this in a way that will allow that representation, that will allow that consultation, and ultimately there is a democratic clock if you have a mayor that does not abide with that. Amendments to Schedule 12 of the bill remove the need for the mayor to secure the local planning authority's approval before making, revising or revoking a mayoral development order. I would, however, reiterate, and this is really important, that this change is mayors will still have to bring them along. They cannot build the consent and support of the local planning authority, delivering the development and ensuring that consents and approvals go through will be much, much more difficult. So this is about empowering mayors, because we believe that they have a democratic mandate to be able to provide that strategic leadership, but critically they must and they will do that in lockstep with their constituent authorities.
I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving way. Could she say a word or two about what her expectations are in this new arrangement that she's creating, which will have some plus points and some minus points because no system is perfect, with regards to timeliness of decision making? Investors and others want timely decisions so that they can move things forward, not getting them lost in the weeds of officialdom and strategies and papers and consultations, etc. If we are to power forward growth, time is of the essence.
I completely agree with the Honourable